You know that goal you set at the start of the year? You can still do it, whether you're committed to a thru hike with friends, lifting heavier, or simply walking more. It's not too late to stick with it and make your future self proud, especially with the all-in-one nutrition shake from Kachava. Because quality nutrition shouldn't be complicated. Just 2 scoops of Kachava's all-in-one nutrition shake, and you've got 25 grams of protein, 6 grams of fiber, greens, adaptogens, and so much more. Plus, it actually tastes delicious. No fillers, no nonsense. Just the good stuff your body craves. So instead of adding to your backstock of supplements that overpromise and underdeliver, simplify your progress with just 2 scoops of the highest quality ingredients. Stick with your wellness goals. Go to Kachava.com and use code FITNESS for 15% off. That's Kachava.com and use code FITNESS. KACHAVA.com, code FITNESS.
Weight Watchers now offers access to affordable GLP-1s.
Weight Watchers has everything I need, from weight loss medications to nutrition support and help with my side effects.
With our program, our members are losing more weight with expert nutrition and side effect support.
Weight Watchers prescribing GLP-1 medications, it's been life-changing.
Better results, expert support, lose more weight, make it last. Get started today for as low as $25 at WeightWatchers.com.
A warm and friendly hello! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got an excellent podcast for you. We're going to be joined in segment number 2 by Alex White. You may not know this, but she used to be one of the first production assistants and one of the first people behind the scenes over at VSiN. Now she's doing great work over at Sports by the Book, and back in my producing days, I used to work with her, so figured I would get her aboard. Her father is Kenny White, so she's a part of a just handicapping legacy family in general, and we're going to chat with her about how she's been getting into college basketball this season, some of the things that she's looking at with regards to her handicapping. We're going to be talking about some of the games for Wednesday as well, and I will throw this in here as a side note as well. Need to try to get more female handicappers on this podcast, so I've been making an effort to do that, and if we can find some women that know ball, that would be very much appreciated for this podcast, because this is going to be a fun one. Get to mix it up a little bit with Alex, so that's going to be a lot of fun, and looking forward to that chat in segment number 2. In the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GNet_81. Keep in mind, letter CM maybe does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, we had a fun day of college basketball on Tuesday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
It certainly wasn't the biggest game of the day, but the top cover team that was in action on Tuesday was actually Fresno State, who is now 16-7 against the spread. They do not get the win, but they do get the cover, as Utah State, they do get the job done in this one by a kind of 91-78, but for Fresno State, they were able to do a solid job in terms of holding in this one. They were down 12 points at the half. They played very hard in the second half, and Utah State 14 out of 33 from three-point range, as they had really good performances off the bench. Elijah Perryman was actually their top scorer with 16 points, but Deshaun Gorey, 21 points for Fresno State. Fresno State actually won the rebound battle 37-35. They hold in there, so yay, verily there. Now, in terms of bigger games, Nebraska all of a sudden is starting to hit some, shall we say, skids. They have now lost 3 out of their last 5 games. Purdue in overtime, they had a massive lead to begin this game, actually up 14-1 before you could even blink. They hold on in overtime by a count of 80-77. Rare over for Nebraska, by the way. Nebraska now 8 overs to 16 unders thus far this season, and against the spread, they're now 13-10-1, but for Purdue, Fletcher Lawyer, he had 18 points in this game. Now, it took him 20 shots to be able to get there, but he stepped up. He made his free throws going 4 of 5 at the charity stripe, which was needed because Purdue, they won 11 of 20 overall at the free throw line, but Nebraska almost as bad at 13 of 20 at the charity stripe. For Nebraska, they lose a rebound battle 54-37, and for Purdue, 13 out of 46 from three-point range. They cooled down towards the back half of the game, but they won the turnover battle 14-11 to find a way to be able to persevere here. For Virginia, life and death against against Florida State. They get the win, but no cover. 61-58 the finals. Florida State starting to step up a little bit more defensively. They're now 13-10-1 against the spread, by the way, and for Florida State, they only go 6 of 33 from three-point range, but they hold in there because they won the turnover battle 14-8. Now they lose the rebound battle 47-37 as the man that was really able to bail out Virginia. You had Jakari White coming off the bench for 19 points. Nobody else on the roster had double figures, and for Virginia, just 5 of 8 at the free throw line. Florida State, they go 16 out of 22 at the free throw line, so that was an interesting one. For Baylor, they continue to have their struggles. They lose to BYU 99-94 the finalists. For BYU, other than that Houston game, they've been playing a lot of overs recently, and Baylor now 10-13 against the spread, so they have not been covering a lot of spreads for you this far this season, and BYU is actually only 10-14 against the spread themselves. But for BYU, Robert Wright was Mr. Wright, 30 points. He threw in there 3 assists, and AJ DeMonza goes for 36 points. BYU 99 points despite going 3 of 19 from 3-point. And for James Nanji, once again, 0 points in this game. Yay, verily there, as Baylor goes 10 of 21 from 3-point range, but they do lose the turnover battle in this game 13-5. So that was a winner for BYU. And then you saw Houston get the win, but no cover. It was about a 17-point line, 66-52 the final in this one. And for Houston, it does feel like they're starting to hunker down once again with their defense, as for Utah, just 2 of 17 from 3-point. Houston goes 9 of 26 from 3, and Emmanuel Sharp lived up to his name, 27 big points. And for Houston, they win the rebound battle 32-28. They win the turnover battle 13-5, but Utah does enough to be able to hold in there, as their 2-point shooting was relatively solid in terms of that, 18 out of 27 on their 2-point shots, so they were able to get the cover in that one. For Duke, they win by a count of 70-54 in this game. Now, this was a closing line of about 17-17.5, so Pittsburgh able to get there in terms of a lot of closing numbers, but still a relatively solid performance here from Duke, and they covered a lot of the opening numbers as well. For Duke, had a really nice performance here out of Isaiah Evans, who supplied 21 points. Duke has been hit or miss from 3-point, 9-23 from 3-point in this one, and Pittsburgh 9-33 from the outside, but Pittsburgh does hold in there because they win the turnover battle 13-12. For Pittsburgh, they were down 6 at the half. Things were starting to get a little bit carried away in the second half, but they do just enough to be able to cover this one. For Vanderbilt, it's been a rough sledding for them, but they get back online 84-76. They get the win. They get the cover against Auburn, as Auburn 7-17 from 3-point. Each of their starters had double figures, but a whopping 9 points off the bench. And for Vanderbilt, they go 26 out of 30 at the free throw line. Vanderbilt actually loses the rebound battle 36-27, but they win the turnover battle 8-7. And on their 2-point shots, you had Auburn go just 17 out of 43. So the interior defense for Vanderbilt steps up, and so does Tyler Tanner with 25 points in this one. For TCU, they step up. How about a 62-55 winner over Iowa State? Iowa State actually had the lead at the half, and they were leading for much of this game. As a matter of fact, it was 55-50 with 2 minutes and change remaining. TCU, a 12-0 bonsai charge to be able to steal this game away. Iowa State, who's been a really good 3-point shooting team, just 5 of 23 from the outside. Meanwhile, for TCU, they go 5 of 18 from 3-point. Micah Robinson, along with Tanner Toolson, 17 points apiece for Iowa State. They lose a rebound battle 36-31, and they actually lose the turnover battle 17-15. So sloppy Joe's game, and TCU finds a way to be able to pull that one out. LSU just all sorts of sloppy in this one. Arkansas has actually been one of your better cover teams in all of college basketball. Now in terms of against the spread, with this win and cover 16-8 against the spread, they lambaste LSU 91-62. The final is LSU 3 of 21 from 3-point. No De'Don Thomas in this game, and for Arkansas, Malik Thomas, he was able to go out there, give you 20 points. Serious Acuff, 28 points. Arkansas only goes 3 of 12 from 3-point, but they win the turnover battle 14-10. They actually lose the rebound battle 43-36, as you had LSU pulling their 21 offensive rebounds, but they couldn't throw a grape in the ocean on this night. And on this night, you had Wisconsin, the Badgers, be able to pull off an upset in overtime. They get it done over Illinois by a count of 92-90. Wisconsin's been playing better basketball away from home rather than at home, it feels like, as they go 16 out of 36 from 3-point. Nick Boyd, 25 points. John Blackwell, 24 points. Austin Rapp, who had been dealing with injury, off the bench, 18 big points. And Illinois, 15 out of 33 from 3-point, but here's the difference. Illinois, 11 of 19 at the free throw line. They lose the turnover battle 13-4. Wisconsin, 10 of 14 at the free throw line, and you did have Keaton Wagler really go off for Illinois in this game, 34 points, but Wisconsin finds a way to be able to persevere, get the job done, so yay verily to them. You also had a rare over on this night, as well as you've seen a lot of Eastern Illinois, Western Illinois games go under the total, but you got a nice little bit of a scoring expose in this one with with Western Illinois being able to get the job done 79-70 over Eastern Illinois. It's a bit of a home underdog. With the over, by the way, Eastern Illinois now 14 unders to 9 overs. And for Eastern Illinois, they just allowed Western Illinois to be able to really shoot it well from three-point range. A team that's not really been able to shoot it well from three-point range all season long. For Western Illinois, they go bombs away 8 of 20 from three-point range. And for Eastern Illinois, they played even up in the turnover battle, 11-11. So that was a fun one. And if you're looking at top under teams in all of college basketball, Fordham has been right there towards the top all season long. They are at 4 overs to 18 unders, and with regards to the opening total, about 128.5, it did go over. This got steamed up to 134.5, 135.5, so you cash another under there, and Fordham on the money line, 68-64. They do take it to St. Joe's in this one. As for St. Joe's, they actually go 10 of 27 from three-point range, but 12 of 22 at the free throw line. When you lose by 4 points, that's why, and they lost the turnover battle, 12-7. Also out there in Atlantic 10 play, we've seen George Washington be a little bit of a hit-or-miss team. They, against the spread, just 11-12, but they did find a way in a lot of places to be able to cover this number. A lot of places I was seeing a 5 or so. There were some 4.5s out there. Now, if you got the closing 5.5 to 6, not quite there, 75-70. They do get the win over Rhode Island, but they were up in this game 16 points at the half. So if you got a bad number, you should be feeling very salty about this one. But for George Washington, Luke Hunger was able to give you 21 points, and for Rhode Island, they won the turnover battle 15-13. And then George Mason, as a nice favorite on the money line, they lose to Richmond 82-70 the final. And it's been a Richmond team that's really been hitting the skids recently. But for George Mason, even though the 13-11 against the spread feels like they've been very wobbly and inconsistent in a lot of their games, and for this Richmond bunch, they do go 12 of 31 from three-point range, so they were able to fire on all cylinders there. You also saw North Carolina, after their big win over the weekend over Duke, well, they do not get the job done against Miami, 75-66 the final. As for North Carolina, just 8 of 27 from three-point range, and they lose the rebound battle 41-35. They lose the turnover battle 11-8, and for Miami, it's been a little bit hit or miss for them this season, but did a nice job winning that game from the inside, and they do find a way to be able to persevere. By the way, with Miami, they've been one of your more demonstrative teams in terms of totals, 15 overs, 7 unders, and a push, so a rare under for them. Now, I do have to have this up by midnight Pacific, 3 o'clock a.m. Eastern, and Gonzaga has been a little bit of an up-and-down team recently, but at the half against Washington State, they were laying in this game a hair over 20 points in a lot of spots. They were up 48-21, so right now that 21.5 point line, it looks like they are going to be able to get the job done on that one. And one of your worst cover teams in all of college basketball, San Jose State, they were in action against UNLV, and for San Jose State, it's been a very tumultuous year for them, to say the least, and UNLV, they themselves 10-12 against the spread. They were trailing that game, San Jose State was, at the half by a count of 45-41, so looks like you might be in for a little bit of an over there. And then in terms of other hodgepodge games, Notre Dame, they do not get the win, but they do get a cover against SMU, 89-81 the final. It's been an SMU team that has not been that great against the spread, 10-13-1. They did get a relatively nice performance out of Jaron Pierre, 22 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, but Notre Dame is able to hold in there thanks to going 11 of 25 from three-point range. And then you also saw a interesting one in this game, as for Marquette, they've been one of your worst teams against the spread in all of college basketball, but I believe that's now 3 straight covers for them. Now 8-16-1 against the spread in Villanova. It's actually been a really good cover team for you thus far this season, with them not covering this game, as it was 77-74. Villanova gets a win but no cover. They're now 16-8 against the spread. You had 22 points in this one from one Mr. Perkins and Tyler Perkins, and for Villanova, they do go 13 out of 34 from 3, but for Villanova, they don't cover this game at the free throw line, 18 out of 31 at the free throw line. This is despite the fact that Villanova won the turnover battle 18-12 as well, and for Marquette, they go just 8 of 23 from three-point range, but Royce Parham was able to come up with 26 points, so hey, if you had the points with Marquette, you were able to find a cover there, and IUED has actually been one of your best under teams in all of college basketball this season. They were able to get themselves an over, as UW Milwaukee, they get the job done 92-88. Faison Fields, who's been dealing with an injury, he was good to go in this one, and for IUED, now 9 overs to 15 unders. They just got their totals way steamed up after the first few games of the season. Now we're starting to see a little bit of regression there, and then for Air Force, man, this is not great to say the least. 91-74. They lose to Colorado State. Ever since they put Joe Scott on suspension/leave, they have lost every single one of their games by now 16 plus points. They close as a 16.5 point underdog, so that's another non-cover from Air Force. And Colorado State has not necessarily been your world's greatest against the spread team here recently. Still 13-10 against the spread thanks to what they did in non-conference play, but Air Force now 7-16-1 against the spread, and nothing is going right right for these guys. And for Oklahoma State, they've actually been a pretty solid team in terms of being able to cover some spreads for you. They are now down to 11-12 against the spread thanks to their loss against Arizona, 85-76, the final. As for Arizona State, they themselves have been a little bit up down all around this season as well, but have now gone 14-9-1 against the spread. They've been set as big underdogs in a lot of spots, and Santiago Triot was able to come up with 16 points for Arizona State. Arizona State only 5 of 21 from three-point range in this game, but won the rebound battle 45-34 and the turnover battle 17-11. And if you're taking a look at trend-wise, what we're getting in college basketball right now, it has been all about the unders and the underdogs thus far this season, and in the last 7 days, it has been very underwhelming. 181 unders, 150 overs, so 54.7% hit rate to the under, and the underdogs hitting at 53.2%, 176 and 155. Meanwhile, if you're looking at the entirety of the season, underdogs hitting at 51.4%, 2,138 and 2,025 against the spread, and the under rate is 51%, 2,122 unders to 2,042 overs. That's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we're getting trend-wise. Coming up next, how about if we have a fun chat with Alex White, who does great work over at Sports by the Book right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Decent Family Podcast.
Weight Watchers now offers access to affordable GLP-1s.
Weight Watchers has everything I need, from weight loss medications to nutrition support and help with my side effects.
With our program, our members are losing more weight with expert nutrition and side effect support.
Weight Watchers prescribing GLP-1 medications. It's been life-changing.
Better results, expert support, lose more weight, make it last. Get started today for as low as $25 at WeightWatchers.com.
Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. This is a fun one because we've got one of the OG VSinners on this podcast. This would be Alex White. You're able to catch her right now on Sports by the Book. That's over there at the South Point. She was, much like myself, someone that started out behind the scenes over at VSiN when it first got off the ground in like 2017, 2018. She is someone that does a great job with regards to her NFL handicapping. You've seen her in the Circa Invitational for that. She does a great job with regards to taking a look at college basketball and so much more. And you're able to follow her on the old Twitter/X at her first and last name, Alex White, with 2 E's on the end of White. And Alex, great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Greg, thank you so much. Fantastic job on the intro. You nailed it. And yeah, I started off a producer assistant over at VSiN and learned a lot there and learned a lot from my family, my dad and my grandpa from handicapping. So now kind of putting it all together the last few years. So it's been a lot of fun.
And for those who know, they know. For those that don't know, she is of relation to Kenny White as well, who's been just so great in the industry for so many years. Does great work over at Tom Best and so much more. So, it's really a pleasure to have you aboard. And Alex, I know that your main beat was football for the season. Now we're getting a little bit more into college basketball. Just what have you been taking a look at, and how have you been able to dip your toe into the college basketball landscape this season?
To be honest, Greg, I do start a little slow. Once we really get into conference play, I like to pick it up. But fortunately, I learned to do things like you do, right? Make your own number, adjust as the season goes on, and then continue to make a line, compare it to the betting line, and then bet when there's a big enough difference and you feel strongly about it. So my dad follows it from the beginning. I jump in, get his power ratings before conference play, and it's off and running. So first it comes football, college football, NFL, and some hockey, and then really get going starting January with college basketball. So it's been fun. I've had a couple Saturdays that I felt really strong, and then a couple that are a little off, but really starting to form the power ratings and feel good about them.
Oh, yes, and that's always going to happen to you. There's always, like I always like to say, 2 or 3 Saturdays during the college basketball season where it feels like you're in the college basketball twilight zone, where everything that you think that you know about college basketball, well, apparently you don't on those days. So trust me, I'm right there with you. I remember it was like 3 or 4 weeks ago. Just everything couldn't have went any more wrong. So I'm right there with you there. And are you someone that takes a look a little bit more at the power conference teams, or do you dive a little bit more into the mid-majors as well? Because I take a look at this slate for Wednesday, and it feels like it's a little bit of a something for everyone sort of board.
Oh, it really is. I mean, a great variety for this Wednesday slate. A little bit of everything, but I will say I'm looking more at the power conferences. I feel like it's easier for me personally, but I love listening to the podcast, and yours included, that really dive in and do such a good job with the mid-majors, because you really can find a lot of value in those smaller ones and some good teams to follow throughout the year.
Yep, and I think that it's two things can be true. You're able to find bigger, shall we say, edges in the mid-majors, but at the same time, more information is going to be available with regards to power conference teams. Unless if you have Darren Peterson just decide 15 minutes before the game that he's not going to play, that's really something that you can't prepare for unless we were watching pre-game warm-ups. As we do have Alex White, just great work over at Sports by the Book, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And just throughout the season, have there been a few teams that you've been gravitating towards, either with regards to having success and be able to find some edges on them, or vice versa? Maybe there have been a few teams that you've been looking to fade throughout the season thus far.
You know, I'm just kind of thinking, looking at future-wise and what I have, some teams that I think might still be a little underrated and kind of that way more than game to game. And I really like the team that Tom Izzo has put together here with Michigan State. I feel like the Big Ten in general is pretty dominant right now. So those are some of the teams I've been finding success with. I don't know about the SEC right now, Greg. I don't know how you feel about it. I know that there's a lot of parity, and from top to bottom, that conference is strong, but I don't know if the top teams are as good as, say, the Big Ten or the Big 12.
Oh, I'm right there with you. I think that's a big drop-off in the SEC, and I think that the overall talent is pretty solid. Like, the mid-tier teams are great, but at the same time, you don't have that top team. Right now, Florida and Texas A&M being your top teams. That's been a little bit shocking, so I'm right there with you, and I know that
Hey, Greg, really quick, have you seen some of the numbers on Texas A&M?
I have been looking at them a little bit, and they do seem pretty still far out there. Now, it is a Texas A&M team that was a little bit shaky during non-conference play, but how have you been trying to decipher them? Because game to game, I've had a lot of success. Texas A&M has covered well more than 60% of their spreads thus far this season, and now I'm starting to fear that perhaps they're starting to get a little bit overvalued, as we saw them have a little bit of a rough weekend.
Yeah, but I mean, playing those two top teams, I never count Nate Oates' team out. They are a tough team to back night in after night out. But, Alabama and Florida are two of the top teams. So I was seeing some 200 and 300 to ones for A&M out there, which I haven't decided if I'm going to jump on yet. But, for you to mention them second after Florida for the SEC, that makes me like them even more.
Exactly. They've only lost, I believe, 3 conference games, and I know that Bucky McMillan was none too pleased about the fact that they lost to Alabama by 3 points when they had Charles Bediako, who's now ineligible. So that's going to be an interesting what you would do, to say the least, as well. And I know that you were speaking of Alabama there in passing, and Alabama is going to be in action on Wednesday, and I know that you've got a little bit of a take on this game. Right now with Alabama, they're about a 7 to a 7.5 point road favorite against Ole Miss, and that total is 165.5. You're always going to find high totals with Alabama. But how do you take a look at this game with an Alabama team that it's been very strange with the Charles Bediako situation, and this is an Ole Miss team that just doesn't feel like a vintage Chris Beard team?
No, it really doesn't. And definitely a drop off from last year's Ole Miss team that made the Sweet 16. So I like Alabama in this spot. I'd be willing to lay up to 7.5 points here. I think they should be closer to a 10-point favorite. And I'm very much a situational spot better when it comes to college football and basketball. And I love the home revenge here. And Bama lost in Tuscaloosa last year, 74-64. I think they'll be ready for this one. So I don't like the fact that it's coming off an Auburn game, but I do think that they could cover the 7.5. So I like that side definitely as a pretty big favorite here in a conference matchup.
Yep, it is going to be very interesting, as I know that Nate Oates had some words to say about the international man of mystery on Ole Miss as well, being like, oh, he's 23 years old and everything like that. So we'll see if they back it up, and we'll see what is going to be happening in that game. And this is a game that I was really drawn to on the board, and it seems like you were as well. Like, I know that a lot of people love the big-time games, but I love me some action, and we've got Eastern Michigan going up against Kent State, with Kent State a 10.5-point favorite with a total of 142.5. I think that you know this as well as I do. This was a 1-point game. I believe it was either 76-75 or 77-76 the last time these two teams played, and I want to get your thoughts because I just look at that 142.5 total, and it feels really low for a Kent State game.
Well, not only that, I mean, and you're catching 10.5. And as you mentioned, the first matchup this year, Kent State won on the road in double overtime, 76-75. You're right. So catching 10.5 here with Eastern Michigan, this is probably my favorite play on the board. And I know you're looking at Eastern Michigan, seeing that they've come into this one losers of 6 in a row, but they've been playing tight, close games. I mean, they lost by 2 to Akron, and it was a rough one against Central Michigan, but that's a rivalry there. So I like that side a lot, getting double digits. I would jump in early because I could see that one moving, and does feel like a low total there as well. But I mean, Eastern Michigan, I trust their defense definitely more than their offense. So I think Stan Heath is going to be able to have his team ready to go in this one.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I took the points, and with Kent State allowing teams to shoot 36.5% from three-point range at home as well, I did take a shot on that over as well. And hey, if we're right and this is a game which are able to cover, you get the late game fouls as well, which I always love that for overs. As Alex White, who does great work over at Sports by the Book, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And no doubt, those are going to be some relatively fun games. And then this is another one that I'm looking at as well. This is another game that we have where both teams already squared off earlier this year. South Florida is taking on Wichita State. Right now, that total is hovering in the neighborhood about like a 158 or so. Might find 157.5, 158.5. And right now, South Florida is opening up the very, very slim favorite here of 1.5 points. How do you take a look at this game? Because I've been betting a lot of Wichita State this year. I've been loving what I've been seeing out of them. And I think that you know as well as I do, South Florida, they are looking to absolutely gun it.
Yes, they are. 15th quickest team right now in the country. And these are 2 of the top 4 offenses in the American Conference. So I really do like the over in this one. You mentioned it. They already played this year. That game did go to overtime. So in regulation, wouldn't have got over that 158, but I think a lot was left on the board. So I think we can get some points in this one. I think South Florida with that home revenge too. So I kind of lean that side, but I think they'll be trying to exert themselves and dominate here in the tempo. So I definitely like this one going over 158.
Yep, I do think that this is going to be a spot where we're going to be able to get those late game fouls for the over as well. I'm going to be in on that as well. And then just a little bit of a general question for you. When you're doing your college basketball handicapping, when you're putting together your numbers, are there a few things in particular that you take a look at, or are you a little bit more situational? Because I do believe that, just personally with my own handicapping, that every game is its own living, breathing entity. Like in one game, free throw shooting percentage might be paramount. And you were just bringing up Eastern Michigan a few minutes ago. A big reason why I took their points with them against Appalachian State is that Appalachian State was dead last in the country in terms of free throw shooting percentage, and that ended up being the difference between a cover or not. Obviously, I know that you're looking at tempo as well, but are there just a few things in general that you're looking at right now with your handicapping, whether that be like rebounding, percentage of shots that come from three? Just what are some of the things that really go into your handicapping and trying to be able to find those edges?
Well, I definitely am looking at the free throw percentage and then offensive rebounding. I mean, if you got a team that's really good on the boards on that side, they tend to be a team I like to back more. I think you do a great job, Greg, diving into each matchup and treating it differently. I'm more going betting numbers, really. So making my number and then seeing if there's a difference and then trying to dive into it and making sure things match up and match that bet, right? Or looking and maybe, I don't trust that team so much, I'm going to stay away. But for the most part, betting on numbers and then a couple key things. And I think you nailed it right there. Rebounding and then, of course, the free throws if it's going to be a tighter game.
Absolutely. And Alex, I know you're doing a great job taking a look at college basketball, and over there at Sports by the Book, I know that you're taking a look at a little bit of everything. You did a great job during the football season. You were part of the Circuit Invitational, and I know you've got a lot on tap here in the next few months. So let the good people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people are able to follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yes. So at Alex White with 2 E's on all social media, and then on YouTube, just check out Sports by the Book and you'll see it. We shoot live 5 days a week at 10 a.m. Pacific time out of the South Point. So thank you so much, Greg. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. It was great to be able to get Alex aboard. A little bit of a reunion between two OGs over there for the VSiN, shall we say, behind the scenes crew. She does a great job in terms of looking at so many different sports, and it was great to be able to get her aboard today. Big thanks, Alex, for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family podcast. And coming next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we hit some bank shots.
This is the new Weight Watchers. It works for members like Jojo, who's learning simple, healthy habits, Sharia, who's making progress with meds, and Kim, who still gets to eat what she loves. For over 60 years, we've helped millions of members find what works for them. Now, it's your turn. Watch your life open up. Watch your story shift. Watch what you're capable of. Watch it work. Get started today at WeightWatchers.com.
And we're back here, lovely Las Vegas, for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family podcast. It was great to get Alex White aboard. We need to try to get some more female voices on this podcast. She's doing an absolutely excellent job being able to take a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. I know that she's been doing a great job on the football front, as you've seen her in the VSiN football special the last few years as well, that Matt Humans does, the Circuit Invitational, and so much more. And it was great to be able to get her aboard today. So big thanks, Alice, for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at @GUnit_81, and we are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we are going to go with time order in terms of the bigger conference games, and then these are the games that are going to be on the extra games board. The Atlantic Sun, the Patriot League. If we have any Big South and Southland action, that's going to be down there as well, but mainly seeing Patriot League and the Atlantic Sun. So how about if we get things started? This is 649, 650 on the betting board. You've got Iowa on the road against Maryland. Maryland is a 10.5 to an 11.5 point underdog. Total on this game is 141.5, and I did set Maryland here as an 11.5 point underdog. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Iowa. Iowa has just been so good in terms of getting their style and slowing games down. This team is in the bottom 15 of the country in terms of total possessions per game, and they have been able to really just generate a bunch of turnovers. A top 15 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, albeit the defense does take a little bit of a fall off away from home rather than at home. But if you look at them just overall for the campaign, this Iowa bunch is right now checking in 36th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and for Maryland, 312th. And the first time these two teams played, it got pretty out of hand. Iowa won that game by a count of 83-64. Now, did set a total here of a 141.5, so I'm going to be in a little bit of wait and see mode, mostly seeing 141.5. This open up at a 143.5. So if we get back to that opener, I'm going to be in on the under, mainly because Maryland is also outside the top 270 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. It's been a little bit better ever since Solomon Washington has gone back for them. He's been able to supply the team with about a board, 7 points per contest, and David Hewitt has actually been able to give you 15 points, shoot 38% from three, but they're still missing the Payne train, and Farrell Payne, who was your top scorer, 17.5 points per game. Elijah Saunders shoots 39% from three, but just hasn't been assertive. 9 points, 4 rebounds per game, and outside of Washington, nobody else on the roster gives you over 4.1 rebounds per game. Darius Adams, while he does give you about 12 points per game, really doesn't provide a lot of outside shooting. And Bennett Sturts, he is by far the best player in this game, in my opinion. Right now for Iowa, he's doling out 5 assists, 20 points, shoots 40% from three, and then Tavion Banks shoots 50% from three with about 11 points per game. Nobody on Iowa gives you over 4.4 rebounds per game, yet this is a squad that does rank in the top 125 with regards to overall rebound percentage. They don't allow second and third chances. Now, they themselves have been well outside the top 200 with regards to percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, but they're not going to be able to give you those second and third chances as well. Additionally, this has been an offense that, even though they're very slow and controlled in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, it's 10th in the country, and it's been able to travel relatively well with having Alvaro Fulgurius do a nice job supplying about 8.5 points, 4 boards, shoots in the mid-30s from three. These guys really don't turn the ball over a ton, and they've been in the top 30 with regards to their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. So 108 to 11 with Iowa, and then at a 142 or higher, I'm going to be in on the under. 651, 652, the Citadel is going to be on the road against Western Carolina. Western Carolina, pretty sizable favorite here of 7.5 to 8.5 points. Total on this game, you're going to be finding it at a 145.5 to a 146.5, and I'm going to be in on the under. I set my total at a 144. The Citadel just has been a really bad defense. They're outside the top 320 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but it's a team that plays at one of the slowest tempos in all of college basketball, 321st in terms of total possessions per game. Western Carolina has been slowed down a little bit more as well, down to about 115th in terms of total possessions per game, so they're so fast, and both of these defenses are rough. Western Carolina is about 339th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They have been outside the top 330 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage as well, but that said, this is a Citadel team that I just don't really trust in them executing on offense either, outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, albeit they do have Braxton Williams, Christian Morrow, but able to give you more, combined about 24.5 points per game between the two of them. They shoot about 37.5% from 3-point, and then Solo Bassi, 8.5 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. He's the lone guy on the roster, though, that gives you over 4 rebounds per game, as you've had Z Wally, who's been able to give you about 6 points, 3.5 rebounds per game. You've been able to get about 9.5 points, 4 boards out of Carter Kingsbury, as well as being able to shoot about 33% from 3, but this team is just really getting run down low. They're outside the top 320 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and Western Carolina is not the world's greatest 3-point shooting team. They only shoot about 32.5% as a collective, hovering right around about 250th in the country, but one thing they do a nice job of is offensive rebounds. Top 100 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that become an offensive rebound. That goes up to 35.6% of their misses becoming an offensive rebound at home, and that is a top 50 mark in all of college basketball. You've been able to get good production out of Court Sainsbury and Marcus Kell, who've been able to combine for about 27 points per game. Julian Swarmo is a guy that had like 11.5 points. He's been able to shoot about 37.5% from 3-point. You were hoping for a little bit more at Dejani Dubasi, but he has been now able to give you about 3 assists per game, and Western Carolina is still having their ball security issues, but it's gotten better as the season has went along. In terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, this team is now back inside the top 250 after they were well outside the top 300 for most of the season, so that's been very good. At home, that actually becomes a top 225 mark. Meanwhile, for the Citadel, they're about 200th in the country with this regard, so now they're relatively even up there. And for Western Carolina, I really do think that they're going to control things inside with Samuel Data along with Abdul Fantakaba. These two guys combined for 13.6 rebounds per game. Now, between the two of them, you only get about 12 points per game, but they should be able to do a nice job down low, really controlling the boards, and I do think that Western Carolina wins this game from within. I did set a total of a 144, so I'm in on the under. And with Western Carolina, made them a 12-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay that number. 653, 654. You've got VCU on the road against LaSalle. LaSalle's exploring a cover as an 11.5 to a 12.5 point underdog. It's on this game between 145.5 to a 146.5. Set by total at a 146.5. So 145.5 or less. I am going to be in on the over, as you do have a LaSalle team that has been quite slow and controlled in terms of total possessions per game right now. They're checking in 318th, and big issue for them, 297th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, but they do give themselves some second and third chances in terms of percentage of missed shots that become an offensive rebound, and boy, oh boy, does LaSalle need them. They're top 125 team in the country, mainly because LaSalle is having a lot of missed shots there. Outside the top 310 in terms of both their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, you do have a pair of guys that are able to give you double figures between Marshall along with Jerome Brewer. They've been able to combine for about 24.5 points per game. Marshall is shooting about 34.5% from 3, and then Rob Dockery, Hickory Dickory Doc, he's giving you 9.5 points, 5.5 rebounds around the clock, but can need a little bit more there, especially Justin Archer dealing with a bit of an injury. And for VCU, it very much is a whole is greater than the sum of its parts sort of collective with this team right now, as you do have a top scorer in Terrence Hill who's been able to give you 14.5 points per game, but then you've got Lazar Djokovic, Jadarian Tracy combined for 23.5 points per game, and Djokovic with about 6'10", 6'11" size shoots 36% from 3. Tracy's able to shoot 40% from 3, and it's a VCU team that has been really good in terms of getting into the free throw line, a top 15 team in the country in terms of a percentage of their possessions that end with a free throw attempt. And for VCU, they've been really good with their 3-point shooting, as they've been able to shoot about 36.5% from the outside. Obviously, LaSalle not so great. Does go up to 31.8% at home for LaSalle compared to 28.2% away from home. But even for the LaSalle defense, they're 252nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. VCU, even though they've been outside the top 200 with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, don't have to worry about that as much with this LaSalle team, for one. And for two, they've been able to do a nice job in terms of generating some turnovers, in terms of being able to just control the inside. They're 75th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Think that you get just enough possessions here for the over, so I did set a total of a 146.5, 146 or less, like the over, and with VCU willing to lay up to 12 with them. 655, 656, USC is on the road against Ohio State. The Ohio State University, 7.5 point favorite. So on this game, 150.5 to 151.5. I mean, my line 7, so 7.5 is my minimum buy point here on USC. You've got an Ohio State team that's content to be relatively mid-tempo, about 223rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. USC has been looking to gun at 29th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. They had to slow down a little bit with the injury to Rodney Rice, but now they've been able to bring in there some reinforcements. You've had Elijah Arenas come off of injury, and he's been able to average for the team double figures, hit that game winner against Penn State, and then you've been able to have Cam Woods come from absolutely nowhere whatsoever to be able to log about 40 minutes per game. You take a look at what he's been able to do recently, and he has scored 8+ points in each out of the last 4 games. He had 9 assists and 4 steals in that game against Penn State. It's never been a great 3-point shooter, but for USC, they're looking to control things on the inside. This has been a squad that has been the top winner with regards to rebound percentage. Now, USC sloppy with the ball. They're outside the top 250 in terms of ball security, but they've also been a top 150 team in terms of generating turnovers, and they're a top 45 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and it's an Ohio State team that has been very good down low, so they should be able to attack a USC defense that has been outside the top 125 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. But for this Ohio State team, their forte has really been guarding the 3-point line, and this USC team does not really take a lot of threes. They're only shooting about 32% for 3, so they've been outside the top 250 with that regard. You got Chad Baker-Mazzaro give you about 18.5 points, 4 boards per contest, as their Uzar has been able to give you about 16 points per game. USC, the name of the game for them is getting to the free throw line. They've been a top 15 team in the country in terms of percentage of their possessions that do end in a free throw attempt, and if you look at their overall 2-point shooting percentage, this is the just amount of shots that they do take from 2-point range or 2-point shot rate. USC is right now checking in 70th in the country, so they're really not taking a ton of 3-point looks. Now for Iowa State, they've been able to do a good job in the backcourt with John Mobley, Bruce Thornton, be able to combine for about 34.5 points per game, and they combine to shoot about 40% from 3-point range. Devin Royal, 14 points, 5.5 boards. Christoph Tilley has been able to give you about 5 rebounds per game. He's able to pop it from 3, but doesn't necessarily do so very well. Ohio State, very pedestrian with their 3-point shooting. They've been a top 25 team with their 2-point shooting percentage, and they're top 55 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and if they do get sent to the free throw, and Ohio State does shoot 78% at the free throw line. That is a top 20 mark in all of college basketball. Pretty solid in terms of taking care of the ball, but you do have a USC team that has Gabe Dines give you a block per contest, Jacob Kofi a block and a half per game. They make things very physical and difficult on the inside. Top 20 team in terms of shot block percentage, and I do think that with neither of these teams necessarily generating a ton of turnovers, they're going to get a lot of clean looks on both sides. I set my total at a 153.5, so I like the over, and with USC being able to get 7.5 plus, I'm going to be willing to take those points. 657, 658. You've got Furman, and they're going to be on the road against Mercer. Mercer is a 3.5 point favorite. 150.5 to 151.5 is the total. I said Mercer is a 6-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Now, for this Furman team, they've been really good in terms of being able to hit their inside shots, but they don't take a ton of them. They are 33rd in the country in terms of percentage of their shots that come from 3-point range. Away from home, they take 47.6% of their shots from 3-point range, and it really makes no sense because for Furman, they shoot 62.1% on their 2-point shots away from home. Only Miami of Ohio has been able to hit at a better rate than that. Furman is hovering right around about 300th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, and Furman from 3-point range shoots 30.9% away from home. Like, they're actually killing themselves here, and this is a Mercer team that they are going to give up some good looks from 3-point range. This is a Mercer squad that's well outside the top 240 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They allow opponents to shoot about 34% from 3, but that said, they've been a top 150 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Mercer is going to give up second and third chances. There's no doubt about that. In terms of defensive rebound percentage, they're in that neighbor about 300th in the country. Mercer also does a great job in terms of giving themselves second chances. 81st in the country with regards to offensive rebound percentage, and in their home games specifically, they all near the 38.8% of their misses as an offensive rebound. That is a top 20 mark in all of college basketball, and you're just not getting that with this Furman team. Furman, they do all in there about 31.2% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound away from home. That's a top 75 mark in the country, and now they've got Mr. Cooper Bowser back. He was dealing with an injury, and he's one of their top rebounders, 13.5 rebounds per game, and then Charles Johnson, 10.9 rebounds. But right now, your main guy in the backcourt is Alex Wilkins, 18.5 points, only shoots about 31.5% for 3, and their top 3-point shooter, Asa Thomas, was shooting 39.7% for 3, just returned off of injury in that game against UNC Greensboro. He was missing for a full month, so he's still a little bit shaken up there. Meanwhile, for Mercer, they have been a top 75 team in terms of points per possession because they just do the little things well. They give themselves those second and third chances. Their country average team shooting about 33.5% 58% from three, but they've also been a top 90 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. A little bit of tempo war here. Furman is about 252nd in terms of total possessions per game. Mercer is more around about 107th, but you've got Baraka Okoji for this Mercer team, gave you about 19 points, 5.5 assists per contest. You've had Zaire Williams, Brady Shoulders, and Kyle Cuffey all shoot between 34 and 35% from three-point shoulders. He really shoulders the load. 7 boards, 9.5 points, 2 steals, 2 assists per contest. Zaire Williams throws in there a steal and a half, 12 points, and then Kyle Cuffey. He's been able to do a nice job in terms of giving the team just a little bit more of an outside force and a steal per contest in a pressure spot. Mercer does shoot about 73.8% at the free throw line. They've been a top 125 team in terms of getting to the free throw line. They've done a nice job controlling that battle, and I do think that that's going to be enough here to be able to get the job done. I did set my line at 6, so I'm going to be willing to lay it with Mercer, and set my total at a 152. I think that Furman just sufficient enough on offense to get you that over. So in on the over, and I'm willing to lay it with Mercer. 659, 660. You've got Wofford on the road against Samford. Samford is a favorite here of 4.5 points, 150.5 is the total. And for Samford, I saw them as a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points. It is a Wofford team that has been really giving it up from 3-point range, but for Wofford, in terms of their own 3-point shooting percentage, they shoot 32.8% from 3-point range at home, 37% away from home. I'm not quite sure how that works, but this has been a Wofford team that has been very efficient with their offense when they've been away from home. If you look at them in terms of a road/shoot score venue, Wofford is a top 30 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, defense leaving something to be desired, 276th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Not a team that's going to generate a lot of turnovers, but they are not needing to in this game because Samford has been great with their ball security. Top 5 team in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, but it's a Samford team that really doesn't shoot it the best. They're country average with their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, but I mean, if you're Wofford, you have to be content to send these guys to the free throw line because right now for Samford, they shoot 67.5% the free throw line. That is a bottom 40 mark in all of college basketball, even with their top scorer, Jaden Booth, making 89.7% of his free throws, 20.5 points, 3.5 boards, shoots 43% from 3-point. And then you've got Norris squared and Keaton Norris and Cade Norris. They combine for about 17.4 points per game. You've got Cade shooting 36.5% from free throws and their 4.5 boards, and then Keaton is your main facilitator with about 4.5 assists per game. But I think that Wofford is able to remain lively because you've got Niles Malachowski, who, in the absence of Kamari Holmes, has been able to do a really good job, give you about 16.5 points, 5.5 boards, and Holmes is your top scorer. He's been missing for about 4 or so games. It's looking like he's probably not going to be able to play in this game either, but you've got Caden Vasco, Chance Wesley, who's been able to combine for about 20.5 points per contest. They both shoot in the mid-30s from 3-point range. Wofford, country average team, 72.5% at the free throw line, and while they do give it up quite a bit from 3-point range, I do think that they're going to be able to remain lively in this game, with Wofford also being a top 150 team with regards to their offensive rebound percentage, doing a great job taking care of the ball. I think that that keeps Wofford lively in this game, and if it comes down to free throws, can't trust in the Samford team. So I somehow line at 2.5, won't take the points with Wofford. Maybe my total 153.5 as well, so I'm going to be in on that over. 661, 662. Toledo is going to be on the road against Western Michigan. Western Michigan, home underdogs of 6.5 to 7.5 points, 155.5 to 156.5 is the total. I set my line at 2.5. I'm going to be willing to take those points. It's a Toledo team that very much gambles for turnovers, as they've become a top 75 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis on defense. I think it's already 280th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis now. Western Michigan, 324th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. That's very much less than Savory, but they've been giving up about 20.7 points fewer per 100 possessions when they've been at home rather than away from home. And if you look specifically at their home numbers only, they do ascend into the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And you've got Justice on your side, Justice Williams, who he was missing for the first month and a half or so of the season, missed the first 13 or so games. In the 10 games that he's played in, he's been able to supply the team with 15.5 points per game, shoots 38% for 3. They played 4 home games with him. They've exceeded 75 points in all but one of them. And then you've got Jaden Brewer, able to give you 13 points, 7 rebounds per game. This is a Toledo team that's just getting blasted on the defensive glass. Bottom 30 team in terms of percentage of opponents' missed shots that become an offensive rebound. They allow opponents to rebound over 35% of their misses as an offensive rebound. So Max Burton, who's able to give you about 6.5 points, 6 boards per contest, he should be able to have himself a field day there. And it is a Toledo team that has still been solid with their offense. Maybe they're not lighting it up like they have in past years, but in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, it's a Toledo team that is checking in the top 100, about 84th in the country, and it travels relatively well. You've had 2 main guys be able to step it up from the outside. Sonny Wilson, he shoots about 36.5% per 3, 17 points, 5 assists per game. Leroy Blyden Jr., 16 points per game on 42% 3-point shooting. And then Kyler Vanderjagt shoots about 37.5% from 3-point. But outside of your main starting 5, you don't get a ton with this Toledo team. They've been a top 225 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. They do a nice job being a top 125 team in terms of taking care of the ball in a game that I think is going to be slightly up-tempo, but not a ton up-tempo. For Toledo, 138th in terms of total possessions per game. Western Michigan, they're more around 165th, but I think that you get a lot of efficiency on offense because, frankly, neither of these defenses have been great on defense, and you've got Western Michigan outside the top 3 in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, but with Western Michigan having out there Justice Williams, I think that keeps them lively and high-scoring expose with a lot of efficiency. So I set my line at 2.5, taking the points with Western Michigan, and I like the over. So my total out of 161.5, 663, 664. You've got Appalachian State. They are on the road facing off against Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern is a home underdog here of 2.5 points. 142.5 is the total line. I said Georgia Southern as a 1-point favorite. I like them on the money line, and I mean, it sounds very simplistic, but how do you trust in this Appalachian State team to be able to cover this number? They're overall 226th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and in Georgia Southern, they're neither here nor there with their offense either. They're about 178th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but if you're in a pressure spot with Appalachian State out of 365 Division I teams, guess where Appalachian State is with their free throw shooting percentage? 365th. They shoot 62.6% at the free throw line. Like, it costed them the cover against Eastern Michigan a few days ago, and while I love this Appalachian State defense, they do a nice job in terms of being able to get up in your grill. Now, they're not going to generate any turnovers whatsoever. They're outside the top 285 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but they're 56th in the country in terms of their points allowed on a per possession basis, and Georgia Southern, they're actually a top 125 team in terms of generating turnovers, but they're only 226th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. For Appalachian State, Kassan Jennings, Alonzo Dodd, the Dodd father, have been able to combine for about 28.3 points per game, and for Jennings, he shoots 33.8% from 3, 78% the free throw line. He is pretty much the lone out of their top 8 guys that shoots about 72% the free throw line. Dodd has been able to give you about 5 boards, 4.5 assists per game, and Luke Wilson, no, he's not from old school. He's been able to give you 10.7 rebounds per game. He should be able to do a solid job down low against a Georgia Southern team that has been getting pretty lambasted on the glass. For this Georgia Southern group right now, they are well outside the top 320 with regards to defensive rebound percentage, or mediocre with regards to offensive rebound percentage, but they take care of the ball. They're a top 60 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and then you've got a pair of guys in Tyron Moore or Spud Webb in the backcourt that have been able to combine for about 31 points per game. Between the two of them, they shoot in the mid-30s from 3, 5 assists, 3 steals per contest. Alden Applewhite has been able to supply about 6 rebounds per game. I just don't trust in this Appalachian State team, especially with Georgia Southern being one of the most frequent foul teams in all of college basketball. And Georgia Southern is a top 75 team in terms of getting to the free throw line. Gonna have a tempo war here. Georgia Southern, 21st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Appalachian State is 358, so very interesting circumstance here. I did set my total at a 141. I think that the missed free throws cost you an over, so I'm in on the under, and I'm in on Georgia Southern here on the money line. 665, 666. Florida is on the road against Georgia. For you country music fans, the Florida-Georgia line is Florida being a 7.5-point favorite. Total on this game, 164.5 to 165.5, made Florida the 5.5-point favorite. So I'm going to be willing to take the points with Georgia. Now for Georgia, the defensive rebounding has been a big issue for them, and Georgia is still a top 50 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and overall on defense, they're not bad. They're 46th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but for Georgia, they're allowing opponents to be able to sag, and I'm not even kidding when I say this, 33.4% of their missed shots is an offensive rebound. That is a bottom 30 mark in all of college basketball, and you know what, this Florida team is doing a really good job of being able to snag second and third chances. As for Florida, right now in terms of percentage of the missed shots as an offensive rebound, they are second in the country. They haul in their 43.2% of their misses as an offensive rebound. Here's the thing though, the backcourt play has still been very shoddy with this Florida team. Now it's much better than it was just a few weeks ago, but it's still a Florida team that in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage, they're shooting 28.8%. That's 351st in the country. They've been outside the top 170 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. So I do think that Georgia is going to be able to generate some turnovers. Recognize that the first time around, Georgia actually had pretty good control of that game in the first half, let go of the rope in the second half. They lose that game 92-77. So I do think that you're going to get very much an up and down game in this one. As a result, I did set my total at 171.5. I like the over, mainly because you got a Florida team that's looking to gun at 40th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. You got a Georgia team that is right now playing just at absolute warp speed, numero dos in terms of total possessions per game. And I do think that Georgia is going to be able to find some cracks in the defense. You've got Jeremiah Wilkerson, who's been able to supply 17 points, pair of assists per contest, shoots in the mid-30s from 3. Marcus Millender shot 39.5% from 3. In SEC play, Georgia has been able to ascend a little bit more with that three-point shooting. They're okay in terms of grabbing themselves some second and third chances, and they've been a top 125 team in terms of taking care of the ball as well. They also lead the country in terms of block shot percentage. So a Florida team that's looking to drive the ball inside, you've been able to get 2.7 blocks out of Samatu Surreal. You've been able to get quite a bit down low as well out of Dustin Abson, who only gives you about 3 points per game, but it gives you multiple blocks per contest. I think that the overall backcourt sloppiness of Florida is going to be a little bit costly in what I think is going to be a very much up and down game. And for Georgia, they rank in the top 75 with regards to both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, and in the top 40 with their own 2-point shooting percentage. So I'm willing to take the points here with Georgia. I did set my line at a 5.5, and I'm going to be in on the over. I set my total at a 171.5, 667, 668. Eastern Michigan is on the road against Kent State. Kent State does find themselves as a good size favorite here of 10.5 to 11.5 points. 142.5 is the total with Eastern Michigan. I set them as an underdog of 8.5 points. So I'm going to be willing to take the points. Eastern Michigan has just been a cover machine thus far this season. Like, they don't necessarily do anything amazing. They've been well outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They're a pedestrian team with regards to their tempo, 208th in terms of total possessions per game, while Kent State is looking to fly. Kent State is 14th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but the last time these two teams played, it was life and death. That was a 76-75 game, and I do feel like this total is way too low. I set my total at 152.5. I'm in on the over. I recognize that Eastern Michigan is not necessarily Blazers or anything like that, and Eastern Michigan has been struggling quite a bit with their own three-point shooting. They're about 32.8%, 234th in the country, but these two teams should be able to get enough possessions for that over, and Kent State, 38.5% is what they shoot from three-point range at home, 28.7% away from home, so big forte that they are at home in this one. And for Kent State, you are going to have Dereko Gillespie be able to control things down low. There's going to be absolutely no response for Eastern Michigan against them, as for Gillespie, 19 points, 11.8 rebounds per game. He also does pop a few threes at about 31%. Morgan Sanford, 34% three-point shooter, 13 points, 6 boards per contest, and Zion Medley, 6.5 assists per game. Now, the big issue for Kent State is that he has been turning the ball over about 3.5 times per game. And Kent State, all of a sudden, is hovering around 300th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. I do think that that's going to help Eastern Michigan remain lively in this game, as it's a Eastern Michigan team that has been about country average with regards to own turnovers and opponents' turnovers generated. For Eastern Michigan, one thing that they've done a solid job of is being able to guard the three-point line. They've been a top 125 team with that regard, relatively average with regards to the two-point shooting percentage. And for Eastern Michigan, you've got two guys in Addison Patterson along with Mohamed Habab. They're going to be relying upon. Carlos Hart was part of the gambling ring, and he was their number 2 scorer, so that hurts them. But Patterson, 13 points, 5.5 boards, 2.5 assists, steal per contest. Habab, 14 points, 8 boards, 3 assists, steal per contest. Neither guy shoots it well from 3, but all of a sudden, Gregory Lawson is shooting 45% from 3. He's seen a lot more minutes ever since the Safardo was leading the way with regards to point scoring in conference play. But now you've got Mekhi Ellison, who is with a little bit of an injury. He's been able to come back. He's been able to give you a little bit of production as well. Mac Mansell is able to throw in there some nice contributions as well. I think that Eastern Michigan is once again going to be able to hold in there, and I think you can get enough possessions for the over. So set a total of 152.5. I like the over, and I'm willing to take 9+ here with Eastern Michigan, 669, 670. California is on the road against Syracuse. Syracuse does find themselves as a favorite here of anywhere between 4.5 to 5.5 points. So this game is 150.5. I said California is 1.5 point favorite. I like them on the money line. Like with this Syracuse team, how do you trust them in a tight spot? They shoot 63.2% at the free throw line at home. That is a bottom 10 mark in all of college basketball. Overall, 63.6% is third worst in the country. And for California, they're 16th in the country, which actually goes up to 80.1% away from home. If this comes down to free throws, Syracuse is right now going to be holding the bag. And for California, they do a nice job in terms of little things. Away from home, they've been 17th in the country with their three-point shooting percentage above 39%. They're a top 50 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Now, for Cal, they're not going to give themselves any sort of second and third chances. They're well outside the top 285 with regards to offensive rebound percentage, and they are perhaps giving up a few too many second and third chances on the glass in terms of defensive rebound percentage. This Cal team is checking in about 104th in the country, so not terrible. And Syracuse, they have been giving up a lot of second and third chances. They're 277th in the country with regards to their defensive rebound percentage. I don't think that Cal is really going to be taking advantage. Should be a relatively mid-tempo game, as Cal is about 164th in terms of total possessions per game. Syracuse was 184th, but Not the best guard in this game, in my opinion, on Cal's side. Day-Day Ames, 17 points per game, shoots 41% for 3, and then John Camden shoots 42% for 3, 14 points, 4.5 rebounds. Justin Pippen gives you 15 points per game. Now, it's not a strong team inside. Lee Dort gives you about 7.5 boards, 8.8 points per game, and he has a lone guy on the roster that really gives you over 4.5 rebounds per game. And for Syracuse, getting back Donnie Freeman has been a big deal for this team. It has helped out the offense, but even with them back, they're still outside the top 150 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis for Freeman, by the way. 17.5 points, 7.5 boards, shoots 34% from 3, but overall Syracuse, they shoot 33.5% from 3. Syracuse has just been as awful as I mentioned on the free throw line, but that said, they're a very strong team down low, top 5 team in terms of block shot percentage, with William Kyle being able to give you 2.5 blocks, 9 rebounds per game, and they're still about 60th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Top 125 team in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. Top 150 team in terms of generating turnovers. So I do think they get a little bit more of a defense-oriented game. Maybe I told 143.5, like the under, but I like Cal here on the money line. 671, 672 on the betting board. You've got Buffalo, and they're going to be on the road. They're going to be facing off against Ball State. Ball State does find themselves as a underdog here of 1.5 points. Toronto's game anywhere between 141.5, seeing a 142 out there as well, and at a 142 or less, I'm in on the over. I did set my total at a 142.5, and I like Buffalo here laying the number. I set my line at 6.5. This is a Buffalo team that's done a really good job in their road games in terms of being able to control the perimeter against opponents away from home. They allow them to shoot about 31.8% from three-point. That's a top 65 mark in all of college basketball, and they've been a really good three-point shooting team away from home at 39.7%. That is a top 15 mark in all of college basketball, and on the flip side, you got a Ball State team that has just frankly struggled in all facets of basketball. Right now for Ball State, 326th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, 244th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they are absolutely getting tossed on the glass. 358th in terms of a home rebound percentage. Recognize that Buffalo isn't some beastly team on the glass. They're about 200th in the country with regards to road rebound percentage, but more than respectable enough to be able to get the job done here. And for this Ball State team, you don't have a single guy on the roster that's giving you over 5 rebounds per game. You've been able to have a pair of guys be able to give you double figures, as you've got Armani Ziegler, Davion Hill, who've been able to combine for about 25.5 points per game, and between the two of them, they shoot about 31.5% for 3. Ziegler, he actually does outgive you 5 rebounds per game. That was below that before his last game, but hey, he's there. And then Devin Barnes has been able to throw in there about 8.5 points per game as well. But I mean, outside of Ziegler and Hill combined for about 5 assists per game, they really don't have a lot of facilitation. It's a Ball State team that they're very reliant upon being able to generate turnovers. And they have been one of the better teams in all of college basketball in specifically their home games of doing so. They're overall 69th in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. If you look at their home games and their home games alone, they're a top 40 team. But it's also been a Buffalo team that's been able to do a solid job in terms of being able to protect the ball as well. This Buffalo team is a top 100 team with regards to fewest turnovers on a per possession basis away from home. And for Buffalo, you've got one of the better mid-major scorers out there in Daniel Freitag, who's been supplying the team with 4 assists, 4.5 rebounds, 20 points per game, shoots 38% from 3, and then Ryan Sable along with Angelo Breezy, they both shoot above 38.5% from 3, 13 points, a pair of boards out of Breezy per game, and then Sable's been able to throw in their 18.5 points per contest. You've got some mixers and shakers down low like Tim Oba, No Bachelor, they combine for 9 rebounds per game, and while it's nothing special, and Buffalo is outside the top 250 with regards to offensive rebound percentage, they've been pretty solid with regards to their defensive rebound percentage, where they can really get gashes down low. They've been outside the top 330 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but Ball State, again, they're outside the top 290 with their 2-point shooting percentage, and their 3-point shooting percentage are outside the top 265 with their free throw shooting percentage. I think that Buffalo is going to be able to go out there and get it done in what I think is going to be a slower game, but it's going to be a relatively efficient game for Buffalo in terms of total possessions per game. They're checking in 243rd, and Ball State is almighty slow at 328th, but set my line at 6.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it here with Buffalo, as right now I'm seeing that at around 1.5 and 142 or less in on the over. 673, 674. Virginia Tech is on the road against Clemson. Clemson does find themselves as a pretty good size favorite here, as you're laying with them 8.5 to 9.5 points. So this game 137.5 to 138.5, and I made my total a 134. I like the under. You got a Virginia Tech team that's a relatively mid-tempo team, 92nd in terms of total possessions per game. You take out the double overtime game against Virginia, probably more around about 120th or so, and Clemson's looking to slow things down there, 324th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and Clemson, a solid offensive team. Not necessarily going to completely knock your socks off, but 68th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Virginia Tech is 95th, and Virginia Tech and Clemson both have one thing in common. Both of these teams have been very good in terms of protecting the ball. For Virginia Tech, they're about 45th in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Clemson, they're 56th, but the defense is very much on the side of Clemson in this spot, as Clemson 17th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Virginia Tech is just 105th, but I think that Virginia Tech is going to be able to hold in there. I set them as an 8-point underdog because for much of the season they were dealing with an injury to Toby Lual. He's been able to come back, give the team 11.5 points. He's their top rebounder with about 9 boards at a block and a half per contest, so that really helps out the interior play. You've got Amani Hansberry who's been able to fly about 8 boards, 15.5 points per game. It's a Virginia Tech team that's been a relatively pedestrian three-point shooting team at 34.3%. That's about country average. And then you've had Nikola Savadeas, obviously do a nice job. The Greek Freak has been able to give you 12.5 points, 5 assists per contest, but on the other side of things, you do have a Clemson team that has more of a whole is greater than some of its parts approach, as right now their leader in points is RJ Godfrey with only about 11.9 points per game. They've got 8 different guys, actually 9 different guys, with at least 5.5 points per contest. Godfrey is able to give you 5 rebounds per game. Carter Welling, 5.5 boards, 7 points per game. And despite the fact that these are the lone 2 guys on the roster, they give you over 4.2 rebounds per game. It has been a unit that has been a top 35 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. They've been a top 75 team with their own 2-point shooting percentage and opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, and they are really good in terms of being able to guard the 3. They're a top 30 team in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, but this is a Virginia Tech team that has been able to do a relatively solid job themselves on the inside. They're not going to grab a whole bunch of second and third chances, but Lowell helps out that rebounding, and I do think that it's going to be enough for them to remain lively in a game that I think is going to be very slowed down. Set my line at 8, so 8.5 plus, won't take the points with Virginia Tech. Made my total a 134, so I'm also in on the under. 675, 676. UTEP, they're on the road against Jacksonville State. Jacksonville State is a mid-tier favorite here between 7 to 7.5 points on this game. It is 131.5 to 132.5, and I said Jacksonville State is just a 4.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points. I just don't have a lot of confidence in Jacksonville being able to excel on offense when the chips are on the table. As for this Jacksonville State team, they're overall 253rd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. That goes outside the top 270 when they're at home, and if they're in a tight spot, this Jacksonville State team, they're currently shooting at the free throw line 68.6%. That is 299th in the country. Now, UTEP is 271st. They shoot about 69.7% at the free throw line, but it's also a Jacksonville State team that typically does a really good job in terms of pulling in their second and third chances, and right now they're just 172nd in terms of their overall offensive rebound percentage. That goes well outside the top 240 when they're at home, and UTEP, they're about 258th. They're not going to do a whole heck of a lot special, but I like what I've been seeing out of Jamal West. West has been able to do a pretty solid job in terms of giving this team about 14 points, 7 boards, and he's a guy that from three-point range has only been able to shoot about 30%, but Elijah Jones now shooting 37% from 3 in UTEP. Overall for the season, they've been outside the top 225 with their three-point shooting percentage at 33%. In conference play, that's gone up to about 34.5%. In conference play, they've been a little bit better with their perimeter defense. They're still getting blowtorch on the glass, but they're taking great care of the ball in Conference USA play. Fewer than 10 turnovers per game. Overall for the season, they've been outside the top 200 with their ball security, and they're still a solid team in terms of generating turnovers. Top 75 group in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and Jones and West both combined for about 2.5 blocks per contest. You've had Caleb Blackwell be able to step it up, give the team 10 points per game, and for Jacksonville State, they are going to have the most dominant scorer in this game, Mustafa El Montekiel, who's been giving the team 18.5 points, 7.5 boards, not necessarily a great three-point shooter. Jacksonville State, overall, they shoot about 34.5% from 3. That's country average, and for Jacksonville State, they do a nice job in terms of not allowing teams to be able to really get good looks from 2 and 3-point range, but they've never really been a great turnover team. At home, they're outside the top 260 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and for the Jacksonville State team, they're a little bit stronger with regards to their interior play rather than their exterior play, and this is a UTEP team that is going to be looking to let it fly a little bit more from 3-point range. For Jacksonville State, at home, they've been only allowing teams to shoot about 29% from 3. That goes to 34% away from home, and for UTEP, certainly, they've had their issues with regards to their perimeter defense, but still 34% from 3. That's about country average. I think that that's going to keep them lively in a game where possessions are going to be at a premium. This UTEP team is not looking to push a very fast tempo whatsoever. They're currently 305th in the country in terms of total possessions per range. Jacksonville St, 306th, and specifically at home, Jacksonville St, a bottom 40 team. So I think that that's enough for this UTEP team to be able to remain in this game, and I think that the late fouling can do just enough to get you over. I set my total 132.5, so at the 131.5, I like the over, and I'm taking the points with UTEP, made them 4.5 point dogs, 677, 678. UNC Greensboro is going to be playing us VMI. VMI is an underdog of 9.5 points on this game, between 149.5 to 115.5, and I'm in on the over. I set my total at 155.5. VMI, a bottom 30 team in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. UNC Greensboro is well outside the top 300 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis as well. And Greensboro at home has been outside the top 280 in terms of defensive rebound percentage. They're allowing opponents to grab 30.8% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. Now, I did set my line at 11.5 mainly because I'm just that out on this VMI defense. Even though you've got a VMI team that should be able to find some good looks from three-point range. VMI is a top 15 team in the country in terms of percentage of their shots that come from three-point range, and this is a Greensboro team that is right now 338th in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but VMI is 328th, as both of these teams, I think, are going to give up a just cornucopia of different threes, but for Greensboro, I think that they're the stronger team down low because you've got Justin Neely, who's able to give you 17 points and 1.8 rebounds per game, and William Mavell has been able to shoot 54.5% from three, 9.5 points per contest. Even though VMI takes all the threes that they do, they're really not shooting it well from three-point range, and Greensboro has been a respectable three-point shooting team. Right now for Greensboro, they shoot right around about 35% from three. That goes up to 37% at home. That's a top 125 mark. Meanwhile, for VMI, they shoot 29.7% from three away from home, 31.2% overall. That's about 300th in the country. And for Greensboro, you've been able to have KJ Younger be able to step up, give the team 14 points. Now, on the flip side for VMI, not having Ricky Bradley out there has just been an absolute killer. So that's meant that TJ Johnson has had to do a little bit of everything, 18 points, 7 boards, and then you've got Linus Holstrom, Mario Tatum, who combine for about 20 points per game, and Holstrom does shoot about 35.5% from three. You've been able to get some relatively good rebounding out of AJ Clark, 6.5 points, 6 rebounds per game, but he's been dealing with a little bit of injury recently. Tan Yiziglu as the point guard, about 4.5 assists per game, but VMI, even though they've been able to do an okay job taking care of the ball, top 120 team, there's a fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, just not finding a lot of success on the inside, outside the top 280 with their own 2-point shooting percentage and opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and I do think that Greensboro going to be able to win from within in a game where this VMI team only about 241st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Greensboro has sped themselves up big time from past years, 188th in terms of total possessions per game, and I just think that you get no defensive efficiency whatsoever. So my line at 11.5, I'm willing to lay with Greensboro, and I'm going to be in on the over. I set my total at a 155.5. 679, 680 on the card. Alabama is going to be on the road against Ole Miss. Ole Miss is a home underdog of 7.5 points. So on this game, it is 165.5. So Alabama is a 6.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take 7+ here with Ole Miss. With Ole Miss, I do think that Chris Beard is going to be able to get things figured out a little bit more for a team that, quite frankly, has been really disappointing this year. For this Ole Miss team, they are well outside the top 75 in terms of their opponent's 2-point shooting percentage and their own 2-point shooting percentage. So they're not executing on the inside. As a matter of fact, their own 2-point shooting percentage is outside the top 250 in the country. And for Ole Miss, the one thing that they've been able to do a relatively okay job of is being able to guard the 3-point line. And as we know, Alabama, they're going to be looking to go bombs away from three. They're a top 10 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from 3-point range. And right now for this Ole Miss team at home, they allow opponents to shoot only about 30.6% from 3-point range. And Alabama, in terms of the overall shooting percentages on defense, have not been bad. They're a top 75 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They can be sometimes a little bit more fragile on the inside as they give up a lot of second and third chances, but they're also 76 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but they don't put you under any duress whatsoever. They're a bottom 20 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. With Alabama, you know that this team is going to be firing all cylinders on offense, 20th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but I do think that Ole Miss has the goods to be able to hold in there, and with Nate Oates, he put out there a little bit of bulletin board material with Elias Cardine, hopefully I said that correct, being someone that played a lot of international basketball with regards to Charles Bediako situation, so might have fired up this Ole Miss team a little bit as the international man of mystery right now giving you about 11 points per game and a CO per contest, and then you've got AJ Soares been able to give you 13.5 points, shoots 37.5% from 3-point range. It's an Ole Miss team that also does a great job in terms of taking care of the ball. They've been a top 40 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Country average team shooting about 34% from 3-point range, and for Alabama. While they take a bunch of threes, it's not like they're an awful three-point shooting team by any stretch of the imagination, but you'd maybe expect it to be a little bit better than what it has been. Overall for the season, they've been just outside the top 100 in terms of that three-point shooting percentage. Right now, they're up to 87th after they had a nice outburst over the weekend. They shoot 35% from three at home, 35.8% away from home, but they can sometimes be a little bit streaky. You've been able to have about 22 to 23 points per contest this season out of LeBaron Filan, who's been able to shoot 39% from three. Aiden Allway has been an X factor, shooting 43.5% from three-point shell with a little bit of injury, but he's back and he's been looking very, very good for this unit. And then Aiden Sherrill, 10.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. Do have to wonder how the Charles Bediako situation really gave this team maybe a little bit of strife, because honestly, he was a little bit of an albatross for this team. He really didn't help them out whatsoever. But that said, I do think that for Ole Miss, they're going to do a nice job in terms of holding in this game. They're not going to be under duress, and an Alabama team that's in the top 20 in terms of total possessions per game, I think gets things cranked upwards. So I did set my line at 6.5. We'll take 7+ here with Ole Miss. Made my total 166.5. So on the 165.5, I'm in on the over. 681, 682. It's Chattanooga. They're going to be on the road against ETSU. East Tennessee State, 10.5 to 11.5 by favorite. So on this game, 143.5 to 144.5. I set my line at 11. I'm mostly seeing 10.5, and between a 10.5 to an 11.5, I'd rather lay it with ETSU rather than take the points with Chattanooga. For Chattanooga, this team is a top 25 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from three-point range, and they're a country average team. They shoot about 34.2% from three. That's spot 164th in all of college basketball, but now they have to go up against an East Tennessee team that has been very dominant with their defense. They're currently 38th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, top 75 group in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And for East Tennessee State, right now they're allowing teams to shoot from three-point range about 32.4% from three at home. That goes to about 34.5% away from home. Meanwhile, it's a Chattanooga team that, honestly, with regards to their overall shooting percentages, they haven't been the world's worst. They're about 167th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. In terms of two-point shooting percentage, it gets a little bit more bloody at about 211th, but that's still not awful. But they're hovering right around about 300th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, because they're absolutely getting tossed on the glass. They're a bottom 100 team with regards to their offensive rebound percentage. They're not doing a whole heck of a lot to be able to prevent second and third chances as well, and for this bunch, they're outside the top 300 with regards to turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and Chattanooga only has one double-figure score. Jordan Princeton is able to give you about 15 points, so shoot about 42.5% from three, and Brandon Watkins shoots 48% from three, 9.5 points per contest, but it's a lot of mixing and shaking, and you don't have a single healthy guy on the roster that gives you over 4.2 rebounds per game, with Tate Darner giving you approximately 4.2 rebounds per game. Meanwhile, for East Tennessee State, they're not grabbing the second and third chances that they have in the past, and they're playing quite slowly, and really, both of these teams are. Chattanooga right now about 281st in terms of total possessions per game. ETSU is 288, so very similar tempos there. But that said, you've got Cam Morris, Blake Barkley combining for 29 points per game. Between the two of them, they shoot 37% per three, combined for about 10.5 rebounds per game, block per contest for Morris as well. And then Brian Taylor, 13.5 points, trio of assists, 4 boards, really good versatility. And even though Alan Strouthers only gives you 4 points per game, throws in there 3.5 assists per game. It is an ETSU team that has been very good on the inside, being a top 50 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage. ETSU, a top 125 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. They do a great job taking care of the ball themselves, being a top 70 team with regards to few turnovers on a per possession basis, and I think that wins out in this spot. So with ETSU, I set them as an 11-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 10.5 with them. I do think that you're going to get an efficient offensive game, even though it's going to be slowed down. So I told 145, so here at the 143.5, 144.5, I'm in on the over. It's 683, 684. UTSA, meet the Road Runners, are on the road against East Carolina. East Carolina is a favorite of 11 to 11.5 points. So on this game between 147.5 to a 148, and I said ETSU as a sizable underdog here of 11.5 points. I'm willing to lay up to 11 with East Carolina. Both of these teams are grody, and both of these teams, man, are they leaving a whole heck of a lot of something to be desired on offense. These are, as a matter of fact, 2 of the bottom 6 teams in all of college basketball with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage, as right now for East Carolina, they are checking in a nice hearty 360th with their 3-point shooting percentage. ETSU, 361st, and ETSU, they're right now 333rd in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. UTSA is 357th, and for UTSA, they should be able to grab some second and third chances against an East Carolina team that's 270th with regards to their defensive rebound percentage. Not great, about 30.4% of missed shots by opponents become an offensive rebound, but away from them, UTSA is allowing teams to grab 39.2% of their misses as an offensive rebound. That is rough to say the least, and East Carolina is going to have the best rebounder in this game as they've been able to get 9.5 boards, 13.5 points per game out of Giovanni Emeruju, and by far the best player in this game, in my opinion, is Jordan Riley. 23.5 points. He's been able to throw in their 5.5 boards, pair of assists, 1.6 steals per game, and all of a sudden, Dimitri Gardner has actually given this team a little bit of three-point shooting. He shoots 54% from three, and he is quite literally the lone player on the roster shooting above 30% from three. He was banged up towards the beginning part of the season, so at the very least, there's reason to believe that it's getting a little bit better for this offense. Meanwhile, for our UTSA, it's just all sorts of rough for this team, as right now you've got on most days 2 guys in double figures. It all depends upon what happened the previous game with their number 2 guy in Austin Nunez, who's right now averaging 9.8 points per game. He's been hovering between 9.5 to 10, but Jamar Simpson, 16 points, 4 boards. He shoots about 31.5% from three, but man, this team is just really getting dump trucked down low, and they're not even shooting it well at the free throw line. They're shooting about 69% of the free throw line now. We'll say for East Carolina, they've also been well outside the top 250 in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage. So you've got 2 teams that in pretty much every facet of basketball is very, very grody, but East Carolina, they're the far better defensive team, and that's not saying much. We're 239th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. UTSA is 348th. UTSA is not generating turnovers the way that they were looking to, and this is an East Carolina team that doesn't do a great job in terms of taking care of the ball, but outside of Jameer Simpson, you just have really no consistency for this team whatsoever. You don't have a single guy on the roster outside of Babacar Njai giving you over 5 rebounds per game. He's at 5.4 rebounds per contest. It's honestly a team that's been able to haul in there some second and third chances. UTSA, top 150 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, but they can't shoot it from anywhere. East Carolina, I believe that they're getting better with Gardner getting back in the fold, and they should be able to take it to a UTSA team that their metrics right now are big giant sea of red, and they've won as many games in the American Conference as myself. So I did set my line at 11.5. I'm willing to lay with East Carolina, made them an 11.5 point favorite, and I'm going to be in on the under semi-total at a 143.5, 685, 686. You've got UConn, and they're going to be on the road against Butler, and Butler does find themselves as a good-sized underdog here of 10.5 to 11 points on this game, 144.5 to 145, and I did set my total at a 145, so 144.5. My max buy point on the over is you've got a UConn team that's going to be looking to slow it down a little bit, 259th in terms of total possessions per game. Butler, they're very content to gun it, 48th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and for this Butler group, they're an ordinary three-point shooting team. Does go up to 35.9% three-point shooting at home compared to 31.4% away from home, but 184th with regards to their three-point shooting percentage, but they've been able to do a really nice job in terms of giving themselves second and third chances. Butler, 49th in the country in terms of percentage of the missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, but you do have to face off against a UConn team that's been a top 30 team with regards to their overall rebound percentage, as you've had Alex Caravan and company do a really good job in terms of stepping up for Caravan. He's been very versatile with 13 plus points per contest, hauls in there about 5.5 boards from three-point range, currently shooting about 42% from the outside, and then Terrace Reed has been that main low post presence, pair of blocks, 7.5 boards, 14 points per game, solo ball, still only shooting 29% from three. I do think that that's going to be going northward, and for UConn, they got off as a team to a little bit of a rough three-point shooting start. Now they're shooting about 36.8% from three-point. In conference play, they've been shooting 38.5% from three, so it's been a good sign, and they absolutely lock things down low. They're a top 20 team with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage and opponents' three-point shooting percentage. And for this UConn team, they become about 1/1 in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per-possession basis, with Silas Emery giving you 5.5 assists, double-figure amount of points. For Butler, it's all about Michael Ajayi along with Finley Bizjak's teams from the outside, shooting 36.5% from three, 18 points as the main guard. And Ajayi is a little bit of a point forward. He doesn't necessarily shoot it well from three, but 15.5 points, 3 assists, a steal, a block, 11.5 rebounds per game. Just to do it all gadget guy. One guy on the roster, though, that gives you over 5 rebounds per game. Drayton Jones has been able to give you about 5 boards per contest. It's a Butler team that has been fragile on the inside. They're outside the top 175 with regards to their two-point shooting percentage for opponents. And for Butler, they have been outside the top 175 in terms of defensive rebound percentage as well. They're not putting teams under duress, but I do think that the way that they grab second and third chances and the way that this Butler team has been able to get a little bit more recently out of Jamie Kaiser and Evan Hayward, who in conference play have been able to combine for about 16 points per contest, and you've had Xavier Robinson be able to shoot about 37.5% from three in Big East play. I do think that that's just enough for the team to remain lively, so I did set a line of 9. I'm going to be willing to take the double figures with Butler in at a 144.5 or less, and on the over side, I total 145, 687, 688. Marshall is going to be on the road against Old Dominion. Old Dominion does find themselves as a 1.5 point home underdog. Total on this game, 152.5 to 154.5. Made my total 151. I like the under. You got an Old Dominion team that's playing fast, but not aggressively fast. 95th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Marshall's 117th, so relatively similar tempo teams. And for Marshall, they're probably going to be without Matthew Van Komen. Once again, he's a 7'4" big man that's been able to give the team multiple blocks per contest, 8+ rebounds. He has missed the last 2 games, so was spotted in a boot in the last few games, so that's not great. But you still have a trio of guys. They're able to give you double figures. Jalen Spear, Wyatt Fricks, and Noah Atrushi. Hopefully I got that correct. And between these 3 guys, you've been able to get a combined about 14 rebounds. They all give you between 14.3 and 14.5 points per game. Spear headed the offense with about 5.7 assists per contest for a Marshall team that's had a little bit of a tough time taking care of the ball. They've been outside the top 225 with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis, but Old Dominion, they're outside the top 300 with regards to their offensive rebound percentage, outside the top 320 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. So that all about this Marshall team. Caleb Hollenbeck has been really good with 6.5 points, shooting 39% from 3 points, and it's a Marshall team that flat out is executing down low, and it's an Old Dominion team that has been a little bit better with their 3-point shooting this year, as you've been able to have Mr. Jordan Battle be able to fight very hard for this team, supplying 14 points, 5 boards, 3 assists, and he's shooting in the neighborhood about 42.5% from 3-point range. Robert Davis dealt with injury. He's starting to pick it up a little bit with 9.5 points per game. And then LJ Thomas, along with Casey Shaw, they've been able to combine for 27.5 points per game. Neither of these guys shoot it well from 3, but you've been able to get about 3.5 to 4 boards apiece out of them. Thomas has been able to give you 3 assists per game, but for this bunch, they're just not strong on the inside. Old Dominion is also outside the top 290 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, for Marshall, in games played away from home, 24th in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and their own 2-point shooting percentage has been able to go up into the top 75 with that regard as well. I do think that Marshall is going to control things inside, even with Van Komen most likely being out of the fold, and with Old Dominion grabbing 22.5% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound at home. I think that allows Marshall to be able to keep this total under as well. So my line at 5, I'm going to lay with Marshall, and like the under. So my total at a 151. 689, 690. You've got South Florida. They're going to be on the road against Wichita State. Wichita State is a home underdog of 1.5 points. 159 to 158.5 is the total. And so my total at a 159.5. 159 is my max buy point on the over, but it's a buy point on the over because South Florida team is just absolutely looking to fly. They're second in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And South Florida has been a good but not great defense. They're about 99th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they just give it up from 3. They're about 299th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Now, it is a South Florida team that does a great job in terms of being able to scrap for second and third chances, but guess who's even better in terms of grabbing offensive rebounds? Wichita State. Wichita State is 20th in terms of overall rebound percentage. In terms of percentage of their own missed shots that become an offensive rebound, they are 7th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, South Florida, obviously still solid. They're 25th in the country, but Isaiah Nelson, I think, is met his match by the Berg and Wilberg, who's able to give you, for this Wichita State team, a little bit over 7 points, 8 rebounds per game. Nelson, double-double machine, 16.3 points, 9.8 rebounds per game. And then Wes Inez, Joseph Piñon have been your main 3-point shooters at about 37.5% from 3 points between the two of them. A combined 30 points per game. C.J. Brown is giving you about 5.5 assists per game. For a South Florida team that's been a top 125 team in terms of taking care of the ball, but this South Florida team also very reliant upon free throws as well. They actually lead the country in terms of free throw attempts per game. Wichita State has been pretty solid in terms of not putting teams on the free throw line. It's a Wichita State team that they themselves shoot 67.5% at the free throw line, but you've got Keenan Giles, who's able to give you 18 points, shoots 40% for 3. Caron Boyd shoots 37.5% for 3, about 6 boards, 12 points per game. Mike Gray has been able to do a nice job, give you about 8.5 points per game, and it's a Wichita State team that does not give you good looks from 3-point range. They're a top 75 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. With Wichita State, I think that they're going to do a nice job with their lockdown defenses at home. They're 24th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. I do think that you get late fouls and just enough possessions for the over, so I total 159.5. I like the over, but with Wichita State made them the 3.5-point favorite, I like them on the money line. 691, 692 tempo. We give our O to Lane Kiffin. Go Owls there on the road against Tulane. Tulane just find themselves as a pick 'em to a 1.5-point favorite. Total on this game 145 to 145.5. Some places also have Temple as a slight favorite, but I said Tulane as a 1.5-point favorite, so whether that be as a pick'em, slight favorite, slight underdog, I'm going to be in on Tulane, even though their 3-point shooting at home has been absolutely ghastly. I have no idea how this works, but this Tulane team, when they've been at home this far this season, they are shooting in the neighborhood about 29% from 3, 28.8% compared to 36.9% away from home. It's absolutely wild. And then have a Temple team that they see a massive fall for their 3-point shooting away from home. 37.6% at home, 30.7% away from home. I do think that this is going to send neither of these teams are grabbing second and third chances. Tulane is outside the top 330 with regards to offensive rebound percentage. Temple is not a whole heck of a lot better at about 240th, and Temple is looking to play slow, 299th in terms of total possessions per game. You've got a Tulane team that is not necessarily aggressive with their tempo either. Right now, they're clocking in about 216th in terms of total possessions per game, but both of these teams have been very good in terms of taking care of the ball, and it's a Temple team that is outside the top 250 in terms of generating turnovers themselves. Meanwhile, they're 12th in terms of taking care of the ball, fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Tulane, top 75 team with regards to their own ball security, and I think that Rowan Brumbaugh is going to be the best player in this game for Tulane. He's been able to give you 19 points. He's at 30 from 3, 4+ boards. He's like the lone guy in the roster that gives you over 4.5 rebounds per game. Meanwhile, on the Temple side, you've got Aiden Tobiasen along with Darian Bill Ford Tough, who have been able to combine for about 32 points per game. Both shoot approximately 34.3% from 3-point range. Right now for Temple, you've only got one guy, Gavin Griffiths, with 11.3 points, 5.1 rebounds per game. That does give you over 5 rebounds per contest. Temple, a good team in terms of getting to the free throw line. They've been a top 50 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis. They shoot 75.5% when they do get to the free throw line, but they are quite fragile on the inside. They're outside the top 180 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and though this is a Tulane team that's pretty content to be able to get some 3-point shots up, they've been able to have someone like a Curtis Williams step up, give you about 12.5 points. She's 35.5% from 3. Pretty solid down low. Tyler Ringgold has been able to give you 4.5 boards, 9.5 points per game for Tulane. They've also been a top 40 team with regards to free throw attempts on a per possession basis, and they shoot 77.1% when they are at the free throw line. Pretty solid team in terms of putting you on the free throw line as well, so I think that that's going to help out very much of the over. Even though you might not get a ton of possessions, I think that the offensive efficiency is there, and I think that Tulane pulls it out on their home floor. So I'm going to be willing to take Tulane here as a pickup / a slight underdog, as I set them as a 1.5 point favorite, and on the over, semi-total, I had a 149.5, 693, 694. Providence is on the road against Seton. Seton does find themselves as a favorite of 4.5 points total on this game, between 149.5 to 150.5, and with Seton, I made them a favorite of 6 points. So I'm going to be willing to lay the number. It's a Seton team that's been awful with regards to their offense. Right now, they are outside the top 250 in terms of their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. And Providence, a good 3-point shooting team, 35.3%. That is 94th in all of college basketball. Providence taking good care of the ball. They're in games played away from home, actually a top 50 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. And you look at the overall offensive efficiency, they're 52nd in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Seton in comparison, 205th, but I think that the defense is very much going to be able to win out here, as Seton has been masterful, a top 20 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, 14th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. They do not give you good looks from 3-point range, and for this Providence team, they've just been a complete and utter mess on defense. How about 289th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis? Honestly, a top 150 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They really just get blasted from the outside. Teams are shooting over 37% from 3-point range as a bottom 50 mark in the country. Jason Edwards, Jalen Sellers, they've been able to combine for about 35 points per game, and between the two of them, they shoot about 38.5% from 3. Stephon Box has been able to step up, give you about 15.5 points per game, and that's been big because Jason Edwards has been dealing with quite a few ailments. Did get back out there in that game against DePaul, so should be good to go here, but you haven't gotten too much out of Corey Floyd this season with about 8 points, 4.5 boards, so shoot 39% from 3, but other than Oswin, who's been able to give you 8.5 boards, 2.5 blocks per contest, you don't have a single other guy that gives you over 5 rebounds per game, which is honestly shameful considering Providence is 7th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Seton, meanwhile, they're 289th, but Seton should be able to do a nice job in terms of controlling things on the inside, as you've got Stephon Payne, the Payne train, who's been able to give you 7+ rebounds per game, and then you've had Najai Hines be able to give you about 6.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. Trio of guys for the Seton team, and TJ Simpkins, AJ Sand McRae, Adam Clark, who all give you between 10.8 and 11.9 points per game. And with Simpkins, he's your main 3-point shooter. He shoots 40% from 3, really the lone guy in the roster that shoots about 34% from the outside. And for the Seton team, it is a team that does not shoot it very well, but the one thing that they are going to be able to do that I think wins out for them is the fact that they grab second and third chances. Seton, in terms of percentage of their missed shots to become an offensive rebound, they're 35th in the country at home. 38.4% of their missed shots become an offensive rebound. That is a top 20 mark in all of college basketball. In Providence, they're more around about 129th, and I think that those second chances allow Seton to be able to control the tenor of this game and get it done. Semi-total 148. I'm in on the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 5.5 here with Seton. 695, 696. North Dakota is going to be on the road against South Dakota. South Dakota is a slim favorite here of 1 to 1.5 points, and total on this game going to be getting that between 156.5 to a 157, and I do like the over. Semi-total 161.5. You've got a South Dakota team that's just looking to absolutely gunner right now in terms of total possessions per game. game. They are a top 30 team in all of college basketball, 22nd. And for North Dakota, they're a brisk team, not necessarily super duper up tempo, but still 133rd in the nation. And this has become a North Dakota team that has gambled for turnovers. They're actually a top 35 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. And interestingly, if you take a look at the North Dakota offense, they're overall 270th with their 3-point shooting percentage, but 30.2% is what they shoot from 3-point range at home. That goes up to 33.9% away from home. And North Dakota overall in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they're just 199th, but they've been able to do a little bit better job here in conference play. And for South Dakota, they're a top 175 team with regards to points per possession. Now, they're going to have a little bit of a tough time with this North Dakota defense generating as many turnovers as they do. As for South Dakota right now, they're checking in 201st in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, but that improves into the top 125 when they're at home. And when North Dakota does not generate a turnover, man, they leave themselves vulnerable. 342nd in opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Teams are shooting 37.6% from 3-point range against them. And for North Dakota, you really don't have a lot of firepower with this team, as you've got a guy in Eli King who stuffs the stat sheet, about 12 points, 2.5 steals, 2 assists per contest, but he shoots less than 30% from 3. Grayson Ullman is right now your top scorer, 15 points on 34.5% 3-point shooting. Garrett Anderson has been able to shoot about 35% from 3, 10.5 points per game, but this team, along with being very fragile from the outside, also outside the top 340 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. And South Dakota, they've been hit or miss with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, hovering right around about 225th. And where you can really hurt them is on the inside. This South Dakota team, man, they are really giving it up with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They are outside the top 345 in the country there. And for South Dakota, neither here nor there with generating turnovers, 186th in the country. But you've got the top player in this game, in my opinion, the Bruns burner, and Isaac Bruns, 20.5 points, shoots 39% from 3. Cameron Fenns is your best low post presence in this game, block and a half, 8.5 rebounds, about 14 points per game. Jordan Crawford has been able to throw in there about 14.5 points. He shoots 37.5% from 3-point range. And for this South Dakota team, they've actually been a really good team in terms of not allowing second and third chances. Now, North Dakota, it's not like they've been an amazing offensive rebound rate team to begin with. Right now for North Dakota, in terms of percentage of their missed shots that become an offensive rebound, they check in outside the top 225, about 233rd in all of college basketball. But this team being able to shut it down with South Dakota with regards to their defensive rebound percentage, they've been a top 200 team here. Meanwhile, for North Dakota, they're giving up way too many second and third chances at 281st. I think that's the difference, and South Dakota is, as a result, going to be able to get the job done in what I think is going to be a high-paced game. Semi total at 161.5. I like the over, and I'm going to lay up to 3 here with South Dakota. 697, 698. UAB is on the road against Tulsa. Tulsa is a 10.5 point favorite total on this game. 159.5 to 160.5, and I made a total of 163.5. I like the over. Got a UAB team that's looking to push quite a bit of tempo, 32nd in terms of total possessions per game. Tulsa much more of a mid-tempo team, 166th in terms of total possessions per game. Tulsa's just flat out been efficient with their offense, and UAB does a great job in terms of taking care of the ball. They're a top 10 team, UAB is, in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, for Tulsa, 7th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Now, even though UAB doesn't turn the ball over, they're only about 144th with regards to points per possession, mainly because they're a bottom 20 team in the country with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage. Now they know this. They're also a top 20 team with regards to percentage of their shots that come from 2-point range. But even with that 2-point shooting percentage, it's in the neighborhood about 200th in the country. You got Chance Westery, Jacob Meyer, who would combine for just under 29 points per game, but both combined also shoot about 28% from 3 points, with Westery about 4.8 assists. He generates a little bit of a steal per contest. Daniel Rivera has been able to give you about 12.7 rebounds per game. UAB, solid but not amazing in terms of generating turnovers. They've been a top 175 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but it's also a UAB team that has done a great job in terms of being able to control the boards themselves. They grab a few second and third chances. They're about 108th in the country in terms of percentage of their missed shots to become an offensive rebound, and away from home, that actually ascends in the top 75, but they also don't allow you to be able to get second and third chances either, which honestly Tulsa does a relatively solid job of as well. For UAB, 46th in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Tulsa's been 129th, but someone like an Ian Schmeichel, who doesn't give you a lot of scoring with about 6 points per contest, he's been able to step up in a big way. He's been able to give you about 4 to 4.5 rebounds per game. You've also been able to get about 4.5 boards, 6 points out of Tyler Bergeron, but you've got a trio of guys in Miles Barnstable, Tylen Riley, David Green, who all shoot at least 39.5% for 3. They all give between 14.5 and 16.9 points per game. In Green in conference play, shooting 54% from 3 points, also shooting 65% from the free throw line in conference play. But overall for the season, it is a Tulsa team that is a top 10 team with their free throw shooting percentage at 78.6%. They're a top 100 team themselves in terms of taking care of the ball, with this Tulsa team also being well-rounded, being a top 75 group with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. And UAB, they're a solid defense, but they're not necessarily an amazing defense. They're going to allow a few open looks from both 2-point range and 3-point range, with UAB about 150th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point 3-point shooting percentage. We'll say that goes to 31% when they're away from home, but also 115th in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage. Do think that Tulsa is going to be able to get it done, but I do think that with the way the UAB has honestly been a little bit better with regards to their defensive metrics away from home and the way that they take care of the ball, it's just enough for them to hold in there. Semi-line at 7.5. We'll take the points with the UAB. Made a total of a 163.5, so I'm also in on the over. 699, 7 under. Colorado's going to be on the road against Texas Tech. The Ramblin' Wreck of Texas Tech are a 14 to a 14.5 point favorite. Total of this game, 156.5. I did semi-line at 13.5, so 14 plus. I'm going to be one. Take the points with Colorado. It's a Colorado team that's been able to do a nice job with regards to their outside shooting. Now, they're getting blasted from the outside as well. They're allowing teams to shoot over 35% from three. They're outside the top 295 with that regard, but it's a Colorado team that their own 3-point shooting is right around about 64th. They shoot 36% from the outside, and Texas Tech has left a little bit of something to be desired defensively. For Texas Tech, they're outside the top 125 with regards to their defensive rebound percentage. They're not putting teams under duress. They're about 268th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, albeit Colorado's actually even worse with this regard. But hey, for Texas Tech, only about 133rd in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Colorado, a nice hearty 259. So I do think that even though it's not necessarily going to be a super up-tempo game, that you're going to get some scoring. Did somebody total 155.5? I feel like 156.5 just goes a hair too far, as Colorado about 137th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Texas Tech right in the middle, 186th in terms of total possessions per game, and it's a Texas Tech team that certainly has been able to excel on offense in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, 31st in the country. And for Texas Tech, you've been able to get really good production out of JT Toppin. He's going to be your best rebounder in this game, averaging darn near a double-double, 20 plus points, right around about 9 to 10 rebounds per game. And then additionally, Christian Anderson, 19.5 points. He shoots 43% from three. Donovan Atwell shoots 44% from the outside. Here in conference play, Texas Tech shooting more like 41.5% from three. I think you might see a little bit of regression there, but also for Texas Tech, this has been a team that's been pretty solid with regards to her 3-point shooting defense. Top partner team with that regard, but I do think that Colorado is going to do a nice job in terms of remaining lively because they take care of the ball. This is a top 35 team in terms of U.S. turnovers on a per possession basis. They find a way to get to the free throw line. They shoot 76% at the free throw line. That is the top 75 mark in the country. Isaiah Johnson, 16.5 points, shoots 40% from three. Barrington Argyris shoots 50% from three, and then you've been able to have Bingo Doc be able to give you about 11 points, 7 rebounds per game. Alan Michael has been able to give you about 4.5 boards. I think that that's just enough for Colorado to remain lively, and with a Grant McCassin coach team, I do think that as the season goes along, they're going to get a little bit slower and a little bit more defense-oriented. So set a line of 13.5 here at the 14 plus. We'll take the points, and at a 156 or higher, I like the under. 701, 702. Florian Atlantic is going to be on the road against Rice. We give our ode to Lane Kiffin. Go Owls, says the Owls, 3.5 point favorite. The Florian Atlantic Owls, because they're both Owls. So on this game, it is 151.5. Set my line at a 4.5. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 4 with Florian Atlantic. Now, they've been dealing with an injury to Cannon Carlisle, who's really their number 2 scorer right now. He's been supplying the team with about 14 points, 3 assists per game, and he has missed, I believe, now 4 out of the last 5 games. He tried to give it a go a few weeks ago against East Carolina. He was completely ineffective in that game. So even if he goes in this game, I don't think you're going to get much of anything. But you got Devin Vanderpool back after he was dealing with an injury, 15.5 points, 6.5 boards, 2.5 assists, and he's been able to shoot about 36% from 3. It's a Florian Atlantic team that has been very good on the glass in terms of their defensive rebound percentage, a top 75 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage away from home, and their defense is better than it was a season ago. Not going to call it amazing, but about 121st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and you've got a Rice group that just has not been able to really excel on the inside. They are currently 353rd in the country in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage. At home, that's actually a bottom 10 mark in all of college basketball. Now, they go up against Florida Atlantic team that's well outside the top 225 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. At Rice, they do shoot about 37.4% from 3-point when they're at home, but Rice has also been outside the top drawer in terms of ball security, and then you've got Devin Williams is able to give you 2.5 blocks, 5 boards, 7.5 points per game for this Florida Atlantic team. On the flip side, for Rice, you do have a trio of guys that are able to give you double figures, as right now you're getting 12 points, pair of assists, and about 38.5% 3-point shooting out of Jalen Smith, and then Trey Bordeaux, Nick Anderson, they combine for 30.5 points per game. You've got Anderson giving you 41% 3-point shooting, 4 boards, and a steal per contest. Trey Bordeaux, 1.3 steals. He shoots about 33% from 3, but let's say that you get in a pressure spot. This is also a bunch that they only shoots 68.7% at the free throw line. That is right around about 300th in all of college basketball. Florida Atlantic, not amazing, but 71.8%. That's more around country average. And this is a Rice team that's actually been very, very sensational in terms of giving themselves second and third chances. In terms of their offensive rebound percentage, they're 45th in the country. But boy, oh boy, are they giving up a lot of second and third chances as well. In terms of defensive rebound percentage, teams are grabbing 31.1% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound, 289th, with Florida Atlantic being more well-rounded there. there and being the better rebounding team overall, I do think that they get the job done. Set my line at 4.5. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 4 with Florida Atlantic, and I did set a total of a 146.5. You do have a Rice team that's been well outside the top 225 in terms of points per possession, 258th to be exact. So in on the under and willing to lay it with Florida Atlantic. 703, 704. Troy is on the road against Texas State. Texas State is a underdog here of 5.5 points total on this game. It is 140.5. Semi total 145. I'm going to be in on the over. Texas State has become more of a mid-tempo team this year. They're, in terms of total possessions per game, about 198th in the country. Troy is a team that looks to play fast, 64th in terms of total possessions per game. Bit of a warped set because they played that double overtime game against San Diego State, the triple overtime game against USC, but still a team that's not going to be sitting on their hands. You've got Victor Valdez, give you 15.5 points per game. He doesn't necessarily pop it well from 3, but the Campbell brothers do. Kobe Campbell, 10 points, shoots 45% from 3. And then Cooper Campbell, 12.5 points, 5 assists. He shoots 39% from 3-point range. It's a Troy group that is still a top 100 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and that is a big-time kryptonite for Texas State. Texas State is outside the top 330 in terms of ball security, and it's a Texas State team that has been very good on the glass. They're 66th in terms of defensive rebound percentage. At home, teams only grab about 23.9% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound, but they're very much going to be looking to pile drive the ball inside. They're a top 5 team in the country in terms of percentage of their shots that come from inside the 3-point line, and Troy has been neither here nor there with regards to 2-point shooting defense. They're about 167th in the country. That actually rises up into the top 130 when they're away from home, and for Texas State, they've been dealing with a few ailments, but they've been able to have a pair of guys and Mark Drone along DJ Turner to Paul, who have been able to combine for about 27 to 28 points per game for this group. Neither guy is going to really launch it from 3, although Hall, on the half a 3 per game that he's taking, is shooting 46% from 3. And Caden Gums, I wish he would take a few more threes. He's not shooting 46% from 3, 9 points, pair of steals per contest, and it's a Texas State team that, while they turn the ball over a ton, they've also been a top 75 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. A solid team down low, not necessarily an amazing team down low. They're about 141st in the country with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but I do think that Troy is going to be able to do a nice job in terms of being able to get to the free throw line as well. And if this does come down to a little bit of a free throw shooting expose, you've got a Texas State team that has been able to shoot about 76% at the free throw line. That's a top 50 mark in the country. Troy, away from them, they shoot more around about 73.5% of the free throw line, so a little bit less, but still relatively solid. Set my line here at 5. I think that Texas State is going to be able to do just enough on the glass to be able to hold in there, and I do think that they execute the little things hold in there, but that said, I do think that you get quite a bit of scoring in this game and a little bit more of an up-tempo game. Semi-total at a 145, so I'm in on the over, and we'll take 5.5 plus here with Texas State. 705, 706, you've got Bowling Green on the road against Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois, a underdog here of 6.5 points on this game. It is 141.5 to 142.5. Semi-line at 141.5, so 142 plus, I'm in on the under. I just think that Northern Illinois is too sloppy to be able to get you the over. They're right now about 163rd in terms of total possessions per game. They're checking in, though, 322nd in terms of points per possession, and they're outside the top 340 in terms of their ball security. We've got a Bowling Green team that has been a top 140 team in terms of points per possession when they've been away from home. They're about a country average team with regards to their own free throw shooting, and Northern Illinois, they're just not doing the little things. They're also shooting 66.4% the free throw line. That is 349th in all of college basketball. The one thing that Northern Illinois has done a relatively okay job of is that they're not a bad perimeter defense. Right now for Northern Illinois, they're about 103rd in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. That actually goes up to 36.4% at home compared to 30.5% away from home. But I mean, Bowling Green, they're allowing teams away from home to shoot 32.2% from 3. They've been a top 35 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. They're not allowing a ton of second and third chances. They're 81st in terms of defensive rebound percentage. And for this Northern Illinois team, they're allowing tons of second and third chances at home. Teams are grabbing 34% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. And for Bowling Green, I think that you're going to have Javante Campbell just go out there and dominate this game. He's their top scorer with 18.5 points, 3.3 steals, 5 assists. Well, he shoots about 32% for 3. Meyer Wool, though, he shoots 40% from 3, 11.5 points per contest. Sam Towns, he's able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game as well. It's a Bowling Green team that's executed quite well on the inside. They're a top 85 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage. And for Northern Illinois, you've got two guys in Malachi Valentine and along Dylan Dukaman, who combine for about 26.6 points per contest. Valentine shoots about 35.5% from 3-point range, and Ducommun does throw in there 3.5 assists per game, but again, the 15.2 turnovers per game, just absolutely killing them. And this is a team that has just been getting bludgeoned on the inside as well. Northern Illinois, outside the top 330 with regards to their opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, only about 250th with their own 2-point shooting percentage. You've got Gianni Cobb, who's been able to give you 8.5 points per game, but it's a team that's just been really inefficient on the offensive side of things. They've been getting blowtorched with regards to their low post defense, and they're one of the worst teams in the country in terms of not getting their shot blocked. They get about 4.5 shots of theirs get blocked, so I did set a total of 141.5 out of 142 plus. I do like the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Bowling Green, made them a 9.5 point favorite. 707, 708. UL Monroe is going to be on the road against Arkansas State. Arkansas State, a favorite of 19.5 points, and 159.5 is the total, and I did set my line at a 17.5. I'm actually going to be willing to take the points with Monroe. Now, for Monroe, they're not generating a ton of turnovers, 227th of the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and both of these teams are looking to play fast. Monroe is 63rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game, more around about 33rd on the flip side for Arkansas State. But Arkansas State, even though they're not going to have as many turnovers as normal because this Louisiana Monroe defense is terrible, 341st in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are still outside the top 335 in terms of ball security, over 14 turnovers per game. And for Monroe, I do think that their main two scorers, Matavius Russell, Christian Lewis, who combine for about 33.5 points per game, are able to keep them lively. Now, Monroe has seen a massive fall off with their three-point shooting. Right now in conference play, they're only shooting about 33% from three-point range, and they had really started off conference play very hot. They're outside now the top 225 with regards to their own three-point shooting percentage, and they themselves turned the ball over about 13 times per contest. For this Arkansas State team, they have a massive advantage on the glass. For Monroe, outside the top 325 in terms of offensive rebound percentage, Arkansas State is 9th, and for Arkansas State, you just have a lot of balance with this team, as you've right now got, I would say, 8 to 9 different guys who will be able to give you at least 5 points per contest. You've got, as a matter of fact, 9 different guys that do, and Christian Heyman, he's right now your top scorer, as he and Kyle Heyman are your lone two double figure scorers. They combine for about 24 points per game. Both combine to shoot about 33% from three. Arkansas State, pretty pedestrian three-point shooting team at 32.7%. They were dealing with a little bit of an injury earlier on to the San Diego transfer, and Joey Chema, who's been able to give you about 10 points per contest, has struggled with his three-point shot ever since coming back, but he's been able to give the team a little bit of a breath of fresh life. And for Arkansas State, this is a team that also couldn't have it taken to them down low. They've been outside the top 250 with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage. Pretty solid with their own two-point shooting percentage in the top 125 there. And Arkansas State is solid at the free throw line at 75%. I think that you're going to get a very up-and-down game with not a lot of defense. Set my line at a 17.5, so we'll take 18 plus here with Monroe, and I like the over. I set my total at a 165.5, 709, 710 on the card. It's Michigan. They're going to be on the road against Northwestern, and Northwestern is a pretty good-sized underdog here of 14.5 to 15.5 points. 152 to 152.5 is the total. I did set a total of 155.5. I like the over. Now, Northwestern is not a team that's going to be looking to crank tempo 294th in terms of total possessions per game. Michigan is going to be looking to crank tempo there, 17th in terms of total possessions per game, and it's a Michigan group that has been able to do a really nice job in terms of excelling on offense. They are 6th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. It travels relatively well. They stay in the top 15 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis away from home, and the big thing for this Michigan team, in my opinion, is being able to take care of the ball. Right now, in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, they are about 164th in the country. That goes outside the top 170 when they're away from home. Meanwhile, for Northwestern, the one thing that keeps them lively is that they take great care of the ball. They are 2nd in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Even with that, I did make Michigan the 15.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it because this Michigan team just has such a massive advantage down low. They are number 1 in the country with their own 2-point shooting percentage, and then with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, now Northwestern is actually a really good 3-point shooting defense. Right now, they're allowing teams to shoot about 32.5% per three. That's a top 125 mark in the country, and then you've been able to have Nick Martinelli go off and have massive performances, 22.5 points, 6.5 boards. He shoots 47% per three. He's like the lone guy on the roster, though, other than Jake West, who only gives you 4 points per game. That shoots above 34% from 3 points. You've had Trey Singleton be able to give you about 8 points. Harrington Page throws in there about 4.5 rebounds per game, but it's a Northwestern team that's well outside the top 275 with regards to their offensive rebound percentage. And for Michigan, you've had a trio of guys that are going to blowtorch them down low. It's Yaxel Lenderborg, 14.7 boards. You have Morris Johnson now shooting 38.5% from three. Supplies 13.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game, and that Ade Mera, 2.7 blocks, 7 rebounds, 11 points per game. Elliot Cadu, 5.4 assists to 2.5 turnovers per game, so he's running things relatively efficiently there. It's a Michigan team that overall they shoot about 36% from 3-point range, both at home and away from home, so they've been very consistent there. They've been a top 25 team with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, but I do think that this Michigan team is going to be just sufficient enough to be able to get you the over, even if they do get slowed down a little bit by the fact that Northwestern is looking to play relatively slowly. And for Northwestern, Northwestern. Right now, they are just 199th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And I mentioned how big of an advantage this Michigan team has down low. In terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, Northwestern about 133rd in the country. So I did set Michigan as a 15.5 point favorite. I'm willing to lay up to 15 with them. Like the over, semi-total at a 155.5, 7-11, 7-12 on the card. Wake Forest is going to be on the road against Georgia Tech. Ramblin' Wreck of Georgia Tech are a 2.5 point home underdog. 158 to 159.5 is the total. I'm going to be in on the under. I semi-total at a 152.5. You do have a pair of teams that are looking to crank tempo with Wake Forest. They're about 55th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and I have no idea why, but this is a Georgia Tech team that has really been playing fast this year. In terms of total possessions per game, they're 35th. It's a Georgia Tech team that's not really excelling on offense, though. In terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they're well outside the top 250 in the country, and Georgia Tech is just way too sloppy with the ball. 271st in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, and guess what this Wake Forest team does a great job of? Top 30 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Now, if you want to hurt this Wake Forest team, you have to do so on the inside. They are 317th in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They've actually been a top 75 team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage as well, but for Georgia Tech, with their 2-point shooting percentage, 275th in the country, and it's actually even worse at home. At home, they're a bottom 35 team in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage, actually closer to about bottom 40, but still, outside the top 3 aren't there. That's been all sorts of rough, and for Wake Forest, they are going to have the best player out there on the floor. That'd be Drew Harris, who's been able to fly about 21 points, 6.5 boards, shoots 36% from 3, and then Nate Kelmezi has been able to shoot 39% from 3, 10.5 points, 5 assists per contest. Each of your top 5 scorers for this Wake Forest team generate at least 1 CO per contest. They might not have the world's greatest depth, but Omar Blue has been able to come in there, give you about 6.5 points. I like what I'm seeing out of him, and for this Wake Forest team in a nip and tuck spot, they do shoot about 76.5% the free throw line. That's the top 50 mark in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, it's a Georgia Tech team that has actually been able to shoot it quite well from 3-point. You've got Kawasi Reeves, who's giving you 15 points, 4 boards from 3-point. He's shooting 38.5% for 3. Bain Ndongo, when he takes threes, he's been able to shoot about 45% from the outside, supplying about 12.5 points per game. Has been in and out of the lineup. I would say that he should be in. Mohamed Salle, who's been able to give you 7 rebounds per game, he remains out. You've got Lamar Washington, who's been able to give you some versatility, about 11 points, 5.5 boards, 5.5 assists per game, shoots 32% from 3, but again, the turnovers have been costing them. He turns the ball over about 3 times per contest. It is a Georgia Tech team that if you put them on the free throw line, they're shooting more than the neighbor, about 68.5% of the free throw line. That overs right around about 300th in all of college basketball, and for Georgia Tech, they've been a top 125 team in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, but they really don't generate turnovers, and I think that Wake Forest, as a result, finds a way to get the job done. I'm willing to lay up to 4 with Wake Forest, made them a 4.5 point favorite, and on the under, semi-total 152.5, 7-13, 7-14. Samford is on the road against Boston College, and Boston College does find themselves as a home underdog of 1.5 to 2.5 points, 138.5 to 139.5 is the total, and I made Samford the favorite of 5.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. It's a Samford team that has left a lot to be desired down low. They're about 263rd in the country with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, and this is a Boston College team that has honestly been really good with their defense. They're 50th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 343rd with their 2-point shooting percentage, outside the top 280 with their 3-point shooting percentage. They don't shoot it well at the free throw line. It's just all sorts of rough there, and Boston College actually does a solid job in terms of taking care of the ball, right around about 73rd in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and that has been the forte of the Samford defense. Samford 72nd in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis generated on defense. Meanwhile, it's a Samford team that overall with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis are about 124th in the country, but where Samford wins this game, in my opinion, in games played away from home, they grab 35.1% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That's the top 25 mark in the country, and then you've got Abuka Okore give you 22.5 points, 3.5 assists, 2.5 per contest. Benny Geeler has been able to Geeler done, shooting 42% from 3. Jeremy Dent-Smith shoots 37% from 3. He and Geeler combined to give you about 18.5 points per game, and for Boston College, you've got a pair of guys in the paint terrain, Fred Payne along Donald Hand, do a nice job in tandem with about 29.5 points per game. Hand is shooting 23% from 3-point, but does grab for you about 5 rebounds per game. Meanwhile, for Payne, he's been able to shoot about 34% from 3. Luka Tuz has actually been able to shoot about 43.5% from 3-point, but let's say that you get into a pressure spot. Boston College shoots 65.5% at the free throw line. That is a bottom 20 mark in all of college basketball. They've actually been super lucky. Opponents shoot against them 64.9% in the free throw line, so this actually could be worse for Boston College. That's actually the top mark in the country, so they've actually been really stinking lucky with that regard. You've got Bowden Kapke, who gives you about 9.5 points, 6 boards. Jaden Hastings has been able to give you about 6.6 boards, but that said, I think that Samford, with the way that they're able to control things on the inside, and with the way that this Boston College team just does not shoot to save their lives. You get an under here. Boston College outside the top 240 in terms of total possessions per game, so made a total of a 133.5. Like the under, and Ole of Sanford made them a 5.5 point favorite, 7-15, 7-16. Liberty is going to be on the road. They're facing off against New Mexico State. New Mexico State is a underdog here of 3.5 to 4 points. On this game, 143 to 144, and I did set a total of a 140.5. I like the under mainly because I just don't think they get enough possessions for the over. You've got a New Mexico State team that in terms of total possessions per game checks in 255th in the country. Liberty 347th, and Liberty has actually been able to do a really good job in terms of ball security. They're 13th in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and we all know what the specialty of this team is. They absolutely go bombs away from three-point range. They are 6th in the country, shooting 40% from three-point range. It takes a little bit of a dive away from them, but still 38.3% in a road/shoot score venue. And for this Liberty team, they've honestly been able to do a relatively solid job in terms of buckling down with regards to their interior defense. Right now, they're 84th in the country with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Now, they can be had from the outside, but this is not a New Mexico State team that is necessarily the world's greatest three-point shooting team themselves. Now, they're not absolutely terrible. They shoot about 34% from three-point range at home, but that's outside the top 175 in all of college basketball. I love what Jamel Jones has been able to bring to the table for New Mexico State. He's our do-it-all guy, about 2.5 assists, 4 boards, 16.5 points, and he shoots 36.5% from three-point, and then Elijah Elliott, Julius Mims, both shoot 37.5% from three. And Mims, 8.5 rebounds, 10.5 points. He's their main low-post presence with about a block per contest. But for New Mexico State, just not the same defense that they were a season ago. They're down to about 183rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis in a road/shoot score venue. They are actually a little bit better, as at home that goes outside the top 200. And for Liberty, they're not going to generate any sort of second and third chances. They're a bottom 35 team with regards to offensive rebound percentage. New Mexico State, they've been able to do an okay job in terms of giving themselves second and third chances. They're about 95th with regards to offensive rebound percentage. But again, when they're at home, that actually goes outside the top 130. And for New Mexico State, they're a relatively okay team in terms of not allowing second and third chances. Liberty is going to be a little bit beat there. But for Liberty, even though you talk about the great three-point shooting that you get on someone like a Brett Decker, who's been able to give you 50-plus points per contest, shoots just a hair below 50% from three-point range. Caden Bethany has been able to give you 13.5 points. He shoots 40% from three-point range. It's been all about Zach Cleveland. He's a 6'7" point forward that is able to give you a block and a half, a steal and a half, 11 points, 8 boards, 7 assists per game. So I love what he's able to bring to the table, and I do think that Liberty, as a result, is going to be able to go on the road, get the job done against a New Mexico State team that's just taken a big, giant step back with regards to their defense from a season ago. And for this New Mexico State team, right now they're aligned teams who shoot about 32.5% from three. That's outside the top 100 in the country after they were a top 15 team a season ago. So set my line at 4.5. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 4 with Liberty, and in on the under sub I total at a 140.5. 7-17, 7-18. Creighton is on the road against DePaul. DePaul is a 1-1.5 point favorite. Totals between 142.5 to 143.5, and I made a total here of a 141.5. I do like the under, and I set Creighton as a very slim favorite. I'm going to take a shot on them on the money line. Both of these teams are playing at relatively similar tempos. 226 is where Creighton is in terms of total possessions per game, 229th for DePaul, and for DePaul, they just have not been able to find a lot of offense. They shoot about 33% from three, just hair outside the top 200 there. It's not like they're atrocious in any facet of offense. They don't have any strength, though. They're about 236th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Creighton is 104th, but you do have a Creighton team that's also been averaging about 18 points per 100 possessions fewer when they've been away from home rather than at home. And for Creighton, Austin Schwartz has really been the guy that's been able to get things going here in conference play, and it's led to a little bit of improvement on offense. He's been able to give this team about 15 points per game in their Big East games, and he's been able to shoot about 40% from three-point, but he's now dealing with a little bit of an injury, so that had to be taken into account, and that's why I did drive this total a little bit lower. But you still have Jason Green, Josh Dix. These two guys combined for about 22.5 points per game. Neither guy shoots above 31% from three-point, but Blake Harper is a 37% three-point shooter, and Creighton has been able to do the little things well. They're a top 25 team in terms of fewest free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis to their opponents. Now, they don't get to the free throw line at all themselves, but Creighton has also been a top 65 team with regards to their two-point shooting percentage. Now, DePaul is not going to be under any sort of duress whatsoever. For Creighton, they're outside the top 325 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and DePaul's been outside the top 200 with their ball security, but for DePaul, they only shoot about 69.5% of the free throw line, so if it comes down to free throws, you feel a little bit suspect there. DePaul has been a bad three-point shooting defense outside the top 225 there. They're very strong on the inside. They're a top 55 team in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. This despite only having one guy that gives you over 4.5 rebounds per game in NJ Benson, 10 points, 7 boards, and a block. block per contest. CJ Gunn, 14 points, shoots 34% from three. You've got Caleb Banks, who shoots 36.5% from three-point range, but I just still have a lot of question marks with this DePaul offense. They've been solid in terms of generating turnovers, a top 150 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, so I do think that in a lower tempo game, you do get an under, but I trust in Creighton a little bit more at the free throw line. I do trust their backcourt pieces just a hair more, so set Creighton as a 1.5 point favorite. I like them on the money line to go along with the under. 7-18, 7-20, it's Missouri, and they're going to be on the road against Texas A&M. A&M is a 6.5 to a 7-point favorite total on this game. It is 156.5 to 157.5. I made A&M the 8.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Missouri has become a little bit more of a mid-tempo team this season. In terms of total possessions per game, 169th, and for Missouri, they're still a solid offense. Right now, they check in 65th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They score 20.7 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than at home, and you've got an A&M group that has been absolutely excelling on offense. Right now, in their home games, they're a top 20 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They also give up a lot more when they're at home, though, as well. This Texas A&M group is about 89th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but if you look at their three-point shooting defensive splits, they're some of the most extreme that you're going to find in all of college basketball. Right now, A&M is allowing teams to shoot 36.1% from three-point range at home, 27.1% away from home, but they make up for it by being a top 30 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and that has been a weakness for this Missouri team. Missouri is right now outside the top 250 in terms of ball security. They turn the ball over on 17.7% of possessions. That's 265th in the country, and you do have some guys that are able to do a nice job on the boards. Shane Stone, 15 points, 5 boards. Mark Mitchell, 5.5 boards, 17.5 points, and throws in their 3 assists per game. Jacob Cruz at about 6'8", he's shooting 40% per 3 with about 15 points per contest. And Missouri, they're shooting about 35% per 3, but that's much lower than what it has been in the past, and now they go up against the Texas A&M team that is very content to go bombs away from 3, and for Missouri, they're allowing teams away from home to shoot 37.4% from 3-point range. That's a bottom 75 mark in all of college basketball, and you look at this A&M team under Bucky McMillan, and you just have so many weapons on this team. All of a sudden, you've been able to get a little bit more out of Pipe. But Isaacs, who's been able to give you 12 plus points per contest here in conference play, it's an A&M team that takes 47.8% of their shots from 3-point range. That ranks 25th in the country, and you've had Rashawn Agee be able to give you 7 plus rebounds per game. You've been able to get great contributions out of Ruben Dominguez, 12 points. He's been really your top 3-point shooter throughout the season at 42%. We have seen Ryan Griffin have a bit of come up. He's up over 43% for 3 with about 11.5 points per game, but with the way that this team generates turnovers, with Texas A&M being able to do such a great job in terms of hitting those threes and really looking to crank up tempo in terms of total possessions per game, this A&M group is right now checking in 11th in the country. I think they get a nice high-scoring expose that A&M is able to control. So by total 158.5, I'm going to be willing to lay up to 8 with A&M, and I like the over. 721, 722, Cincinnati, and yes, we're on to Cincinnati. Bill Belichick, they're on to the road against Kansas State. Kansas State, 1.5 to 2.5 point underdogs, so it's between 146.5 to 147.5, and I did set a total of a 146. I do like the under. You have a Cincinnati team that's a top 5 team in the country in terms of being able to hit unders in their games. And overall for the season, Cincinnati's 155th in terms of total possessions per game. In conference play, they've been well outside the top 250, though. They've really slowed themselves down. Kansas State is starting to play a little bit more slowly, but they're still 23rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And I did set Kansas State as a very, very slim favorite. I'm going to be willing to take a shot on them, as you got a Cincinnati team that is looking to take a lot of threes. Like, they're a top 100 team in terms of percentage of their field goal attempts that come from 3-point range, and I have absolutely no idea why. This has been an atrocious offense, 278th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. You put them in a road/shoot score venue that falls well outside the top 300 in terms of their own 3-point shooting percentage, 301st at 31.3%. Kansas State, at the very least, they hit their threes. They shoot 37.1% from 3, and that's a top 35 mark in all of college basketball. They've got one of the best scorers in all of college basketball right now, PJ Haggerty. Now, probably needs a little bit more help, but you know what? Haggerty has been able to give the team 23.5 points, 5 boards, 4 assists, does shoot 36.5% for 3, and then you've got Abdi Bashir, who's been able to shoot about 44% for 3, though he's been dealing with quite a bit of ailment here in the last few weeks, probably going to be out of the fold once again, but even in his absence, you've been able to have someone like Nate Johnson step up, 11 points, 4.5 assists, he shoots 38% for 3, David Castillo shoots 40% for 3. Now, it's a Kansas State team that's going to get blowtorch on the glass. Cincinnati has been a top 30 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, top 30 group with regards to rebound percentage. They've got some good shot blockers, but off a team along with Bob Miller, combined for 2.8 blocks per contest between the two of them, 24.5 points per game. Miller is able to give you about 10.5 rebounds per game, 6 out of team, so these guys have been solid. And then Giselle James has been able to breathe a little bit of life into the offense, about 11 points per game. He's shooting 40% from 3-point range. Day Thomas also shoots about 40% for 3. He's been able to give you about 11 points per contest, but really outside Jalen Celestine. Nobody else shoots above 32% from three-point range for this group. It is a Cincinnati team that I think is going to be able to do a great job with their defense. They have been able to all season long, but they're a little bit more vulnerable with regards to their perimeter defense rather than their interior defense, and I think that that's where this Kansas State team is going to be able to get them. I said Kansas State is a 2-point favorite. I like them on the money line, and especially if you get into a late game spot as well. Cincinnati shoots 66.5% the free throw line. That is a bottom 25 mark in all of college basketball. Kansas State more around 71.5%, so I do like Kansas State on the money line. I like the under. Semi-total at a 146, 723, 724. You've got Tennessee, and they're going to be on the road facing off against Mississippi State. Mississippi State, an underdog of 7 to 7.5 points, 146.5 to 148 is the total line. With Tennessee, made them the 8-point favorite, so I'm going to be one to lay the 7 to 7.5. It's a Tennessee team that might not quite be the same defensive team that they've been in the past, but they're still doing a pretty solid job. Right now, they're checking in 37th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and I just really don't know what this Mississippi State team is doing well right now. They have been an awful defense. They're 205th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, albeit they're giving up about 12.5 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than away from home, but they're outside the top 3 here with their 3-point shooting percentage. They're 192nd overall in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and at home, they're outside the top 250 with regards to points scoring on a per possession basis. And for Mississippi State, you've got a really nice go-to scorer in Joshua Hubbard, 20.5 points, but he only shoots about 32% from three. Jaden Epps has seen a massive fall off with his three-point shooting, 14.5 points per contest. This is a team that typically they thrive on the inside. And you do have a trio of guys, Sergey Makura, along with Quincy Ballard and Akura Akur, who have all been able to give you between 5.3 and 6.7 rebounds per game. With Ballard, he's able to give you a block per contest, but even with that, this Mississippi State team is still well outside the top 140 with their own 2-point shooting percentage, outside the top 150 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. And Tennessee leads the country in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, with someone like a Felix Opara give you about 5.5 boards, block and a half per contest. Jalen Carey gives you 8.6 rebounds per game. Now for Tennessee, turnovers have been an issue. They're outside the top 270 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Mississippi State is outside the top 320 in terms of generating turnovers, so that really helps out the Tennessee offense that has been a pretty ordinary shooting team. For Tennessee, they're just inside the top 125 with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage. In terms of their 2-point shooting percentage, just hair inside the top 150 on that regard as well, but overall 53rd in the country in terms of points per possession because they do grab all those second and third chances, but Nate Ament has really been able to come alive overall for the season. About 17.5 points, 6.5 rebounds, but in conference play, he's been averaging 20.5 points. In conference play, he's now shooting 40% from three, and in SEC play, this is a Tennessee team that they shoot about 36% from three-point. I think that that's going to be the difference, allows them to be able to get the cover. And for Tennessee, they're a relatively mid-tempo team, about 150th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. I don't know why, but Mississippi State has been actually looking to push quite a bit of tempo, 45th in terms of total possessions per game, but I do think that the Tennessee defense hunkers down, keeps the total under, and I think that they get the job done. 1 to lay up to 7.5 with Tennessee, and I'm going to be in on the under. Semi-total at a 146, 725, 726. Portland is on the road against San Diego, and San Diego is a 1.5 point favorite total on this game. It is 154.5, and with San Diego, I set them as a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be one to lay the 1.5. Portland obviously had that memorable triumph against Gonzaga. I just don't think that Lightning is going to be striking again. Portland is just not doing a lot of the little things well. They're 320th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. On defense, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they're 242nd. One thing that they do okay is that they've been a top 150 team in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage, but Tim O'George, their number 2 scorer in non-conference play, we have not seen him in quite a while. Now you've had James O'Donnell, Cameron Williams be able to step up, give the team about 22.5 points per contest between the two of them, and they combine for about 10 rebounds per game. You've been able to have Joel Foxwell give you 15 points, 7 assists, shoots 34% from 3-point range. Jermaine Balsinger-Rubb is a true 7-footer that gives you about 4 boards per contest, but there's just still a lot of lackluster play with this Portland team, and they only shoot about 30.5% for 3. They're outside the top 320 in all of college basketball in that regard, and for the San Diego group, it's a team that has really been having a tough time on the glass this year. They are well outside the top 3 with regards to their overall rebound percentage, but the San Diego team, they're outside the top 175 with regards to their own rebounding as well. They should be able to pull in there some second and third chances as well, but it's a San Diego team that they should be able to find a little bit more success on the inside than normal against this Portland defense, and for San Diego, they themselves 348th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, so I do think that that's going to help you out a little bit with regards to this total. I did set mine at a 152.5, so Right now, we're seeing out there about a 154, 154.5. I just don't think that you get enough possessions for the over as San Diego outside the top 120 in terms of total possessions per game. Portland has actually been slowed down by the injuries as well. Currently, in terms of total possessions per game, they check in about 96 in the country. But for San Diego, I do think that they're going to be able to win this game with regards to their perimeter play because you've been able to have Tyler Johnson give you 14.5 points, 4 assists. Doesn't necessarily shoot it well from three, but Tunari Lane, he shoots 42% from three. He's been supplying the team with about 10.5 points per contest. Juan Sebastian Guadacito shoots 36.5% from three-point range. Now, with Johnson, he went out of that game against Loyola Marymount very early on. He only played 5 minutes, so I'm thinking that he's going to be out of the fold, and that's part of the reason why you're probably seeing such a tight line here. But even if you don't have him in, I think that you're going to get a little bit more out of Dominique Bilford-Tuff, who's been a part-time starter. When he's been out there, he's been able to give the team some production, only about 5 points per contest, but I do think that Adrian McIntyre, going to be able to step up, allow the San Diego team to be able to get the job done, and probably with the Johnson injury, you're going to see a little bit of slower play here with San Diego. So set a total of 152.5. I'm going to be willing to take a shot here on the under and want to lay up to deuce here with the Toreros of San Diego. 727, 728. Loyola Marymount is on the road against Pacific, and let me be specific when I say that Pacific is a 5.5 to a 6-point favorite. Total on this game 139.5 to 140.5, and with Pacific made them a 6.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it now for Pacific. The one thing that they're not doing a good job of is taking care of the ball outside the top 350 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, and they're very much playing slowly, 278th in terms of total possessions per game. That said, you got a Loyola Marymount team that they're a mid-tempo team, about 143rd in terms of total possessions per game. Loyola Marymount very good with their interior defense. They're a top 30 team in opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but they're also a team that has not been able to get a lot going on offense. They're in 55th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They're not giving themselves second and third chances. They're outside the top 290 in terms of offensive rebound percentage, and they're not going to find any second and third chances against a Pacific team that's just absolutely bear down with that regard. In their home games, Pacific is right now allowing teams to grab only 19.1% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That is a top 10 mark in all of college basketball. And for Pacific, I think that Elias Rolfe is going to be the best player in this game. He's been at 6'7", able to shoot in the high 30s from three-point range, 16 points, 6.5 rebounds per game, and then TJ Wainwright shoots about 40.5% from three-point range. It's a Loyola Marymount team that you can gash them a little bit more on the outside, and Pacific, they're shooting about 36.5% from three-point range. That's been a top 75 mark in all of college basketball with this Pacific defense as well. They've been okay in terms of guarding the three-point line at home. Teams to shoot about 31.7% against them. Meanwhile, for Loyola Marymount, they're allowing teams to shoot 33.5% from three. That's 155th in the country. It's not great. It's not terrible, but that said, it's not as strong as their interior play. And then for this Loyola Marymount unit on offense, you do have Jan Vide, who's been able to give you about 4 assists, 11 points per contest, and then a trio of guys, Jalen Shelley, MJ Amy, Roddy Hot Rod Brown. They combine for about 42 points per game between the three of them, and Brown and Amy do combine to shoot about 37% from three-point range, but for Loyola Marymount, if it's a pressure spot, they shoot 69.7% at the free throw line. That's outside the top 250 in all of college basketball. You compound that with the turnovers, and I do think that that's going to be a little bit costly to this team. And additionally, for Pacific, if they need to drain free throws to be able to cover this game, they shoot about 76.5% at the free throw line. So Pacific is a 6.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number in. It's at a total of 140.5. I think that you get just enough scoring for the over. So in on the over, and I'm willing to lay it with Pacific. 729, 730. New Mexico is going to be on the road against Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon is a 1 to a 1.5 point favorite. 149.5 to 150.5 is the total line. With Grand Canyon, I made them the 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay a single point with them and not a half a point more. You've got a game that I think is going to be relatively mid-tempo. For New Mexico, 128th in terms of total possessions per game, more around about 218th for Grand Canyon, and both of these teams have been very good with their defense. You've got a New Mexico team that's been doing it via turnovers. They're a top 30 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. With New Mexico, they're overall 41st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Grand Canyon, they are 32nd, and with this New Mexico team, they're 36th in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Grand Canyon, a little bit stronger on the inside, 38th with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. New Mexico, top 125 team with their 2-point shooting percentage, relatively up and down with their 3-point shooting, and for New Mexico, they have been a top 100 team with regards to points per possession, and Grand Canyon right now does find themselves well outside the top 150, but I do think that Grand Canyon is going to be able to do a solid job in terms of just being able to win that battle inside, as they're 65th in the country with regards to defensive rebound percentage. New Mexico more around about 115th, even though you've got Tomislav Bujan, who's been able to give you 12.5 points, 9.9 rebounds per game. Now Jake Hall is shooting 43% from three for New Mexico, 15.5 points per game. In New Mexico, top 125 team in terms of taking care of the ball. At a pressure spot, they shoot about 75% at the free throw line. That's a top 100 mark as well, but they can be out on the inside. They've been outside the top 165 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and for this Grand Canyon team, right now they're shooting 30.7% from three-point range. That's outside the top 300 in the country, so they have been looking to pile drive the ball inside with Nana Wusu give you 10 points, 8.5 boards, a steal and a half, a block per contest. Jaden Henley is able to give you 17 points per game. And then you've got Brian Moore giving you more, shooting about 39% from three. Caleb Shaw has been able to shoot 37% from the outside. They've dealt with a few injuries, but you've been able to have Moore really start to get it going for this Grand Canyon team. If they find themselves in a little bit of a pressure spot, they shoot about 75% at the free throw line. So two relatively similar teams here, and I do think that Grand Canyon, with the way that they've been able to hit the boards, does find a way to be able to win from within. So set a total of 143.5. I like the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay a point and not a half a point more with Grand Canyon. 731, 732. It's Pepperdine, and they're going to be on the road against St. Mary's, and St. Mary's very sizable favorites here. Right now, find them as 24.5 point favorites. Totals between 140.5 to 141.5, and I did said St. Mary's as a 20.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points. Now, Pepperdine is not a great team, to say the least, in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. They're outside the top 250 with both regards, but what has been really killing this Pepperdine offense, ranking right around about 307th in the country with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis. And the one thing that St. Mary's defense doesn't do is generate turnovers. They're outside the top 275 themselves in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. And Pepperdine has honestly been a top 125 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage away from home. Away from home teams only shoot about 32.7% from the outside. You've been able to have Style Phipps do a nice job with just stuff in the stat sheet. 13.5 points, 6 boards, 4.5 assists, steal per contest. Doesn't shoot it well from three, but Danilo Dosic, he's staying 6'10". He shoots about 36% for three, 11.5 points per game, and boy, do they need it, because Pepperdine is right now shooting as a collective 29.7% for three. That's the bottom 35 mark in all of college basketball, and they've been getting killed on the inside. They're outside the top 290 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. So this St. Mary's team that is a top 15 team once again with regards to rebound percentage and playing very slowly. They're outside the top 310 in terms of total possessions per game. And for St. Mary's, their biggest strength is actually their free throw shooting. They are number 2 in the country with regards to free throw shooting percentage at right around about 81 to 82%. And they go up against the Pepperdine team that, here's what they've done. They haven't put you on the free throw line. They're a top 15 team in terms of fewest fouls on a per possession basis. So that actually helps out their cause. You got Mikey Lewis, Joshua Den, who combine for 26 points per game for St. Mary's. They combine to shoot about 37% from three. Now, they're going to absolutely blow Pepperdine away on the glass. Top 15 team with regards to rebound percentage. Paulias Marsukis, 7 boards, 18.5 points per game. Andrew McKeever, 9.5 boards, 8.5 points per game. Even Harry Wessels, 5 boards, a block per contest. But I just don't know if you get enough possessions for the cover or the over in this ordeals. I did set my total at a 138.5. I think that this is going to be a slow down game. Pepperdine is going to have a tough time being able to find good shots, but I do think that Pepperdine does just enough to hold in there. Set my line at 20.5, so I'm going to be willing to take the points, and I'm going to be in on this total under as well. 733, 734. You've got Seattle, and they're going to be on the road against Santa Clara, and the Broncos of Santa Clara do find themselves as a 13.5 to a 14-point favorite. 144.5 to 146 is the total line. Made a total of a 145.5. I'm willing to take that 144.5 to 145 to the over. You do have a Santa Clara team that is a relatively mid-tempo team. They're slower than they have been in the past, 127th in terms of total possessions per game. Seattle's not too slow of a team either, about 159th in terms of total possessions per game. Now, it is a Seattle team that's been one of the more underrated defensive teams in all of college basketball right now. They are checking in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 24th in all of college basketball, has been able to travel relatively well as well. They're still in the top 35 when they're away from home. Meanwhile, you got a Santa Clara group that has become a top 50 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, 59th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. But I do think that they're going to be able to absolutely eat up the glass. This Santa Clara team is a top 25 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that become an offensive rebound. You've had Elijah Mai be able to give you 14 points, 4.5 boards. You've had Jake Amsinger do a nice job with his versatility. 3 assists, 6.5 points, 5.5 rebounds, and then Christian Hammond has been really your designated shooter, shooting 40% from 3, 16.5 points per game. It's a Santa Clara team that continues to be a top 75 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, even with being a pedestrian 3-point shooting team. They only shoot about 33.8% from 3, but they've been a top 35 team in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage. And you've got a Seattle group that does have an ace go-to guy in Braden Maldonado with about 14.5 points. Shoots about 36% from 3. He's the only out of their top 5 scorers that shoots above 30% from 3-point. So you've had John Murphy, John Christophilis both be able to give you about 36+% 3-point shooting, but for Seattle. They're outside the top 200 with regards to both their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, outside the top 200 as well with their free throw shooting percentage. So they're just not shooting great in general. The forte of this team has been generating turnovers. Top 35 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. And they've been in the top 100 with regards to opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. But I do think that you get enough possessions here for the over. And it is a Seattle team that just has been blown off the boards a little bit as well. They're outside the top 250 with regards to their offensive rebound percentage in terms of percentage of opponents' missed shots that become an offensive rebound as well. 360th. They're allowing opponents grab over 30% of their misses as an offensive board, and I think that allows Santa Clara to be able to get the job done here. I did set my line at 13.5. Once you get to 14, it just becomes a little bit too much, in my opinion. So 14 plus does become my buy point here on Seattle. And I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the over. So by total at a 145.5. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting more before we hit the extra games. 7:35, 7:36. Penn State is on the road against Washington. Washington is a 12.5 point favorite. So last game 154.5 to 155.5. Set a total of 156. I'm in on the over. Even though Penn State is a very slow team, 260th in terms of total possessions per game. Man, this is an inefficient defense. 338th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. In games played away from home, only Bellarmine is giving up more points on a per possession basis. Washington, a solid defense, 136th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And it is a Washington team that, to their credit, they've done a nice job not allowing a lot of second and third chances, 70th in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage. You got a Penn State group that has been 271st here in Penn State. Right now, you've only got one guy on the roster for this team that's giving you over 4 rebounds per game, so they've been all sorts of brutal there. That'd be Ivan Jurcic, who's been able to give you 5.3 boards, 9.5 points per game, and to the credit of Penn State, they do a nice job in terms of taking care of the ball. They've been, in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, a top 40 team. Freddie De Leon, 14.5 points, 3.5 boards. Kate Domingo, 13.5 points, 4.4 assists, but I mean, for Penn State, they're only shooting about 32.5% from three, so it's not even like they're excelling there, and they're a bottom 10 team in the country with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. That's big because Washington has not been a good 3-point shooting team whatsoever. Right now, overall, they're shooting about 32.5% from three. That's outside the top 275. You do have back Wesley Yates. That's big. He shoots 37.5% from three. Really, their top outside shooter, 14 points per contest. Zoom Diallo, he's been able to zoom his way to about 15 points, 4.5 assists, and then Hans Steinbach, he's been able to do a nice job down low, 17.5 points, a little bit over 11 rebounds per game, and I do think that Washington going to take it to a Penn State team that has to travel through 3 time zones. They just have not been able to excel on defense whatsoever. They have nothing down low, and with Washington being a team that's very much looking to pile drive the ball down low, I think that this is a good spot for them to be able to get some points upon the board. Set my line at 14, willing to lay up to 13.5 with Washington, and I'm in on the over sub by total 156, and we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-545, 306-546. You've got Boston U on the road against Army, and Army does find themselves as a home underdog of 3.5 points. 142.5 is the total. I am going to be in on the under here. I set my total 141.5. I just flat out don't think that you get enough possessions for the overs. Boston U is right now 317th in terms of total possessions per game. Army a bit more of a mid-tempo team, about 203rd, but for Army, they are really looking to bomb it from 3-point range, or a top 10 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from 3-point range, and you have a Boston U team that is right now 347th in opponents' 3-point shooting percentage at 37.7%. Now for Boston U, they themselves have been a top 50 team with regards to their overall 3-point shooting percentage, and a top 110 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Even with the solo play, you've got Michael Air McNair give you 16 points, 5 boards. He shoots 46% from 3, and then Sam Hughes has been a 37.5% 3-point shooter. He throws in their 19 points per game. It's a Boston U team, though, that they're just very fragile on the inside. They used to be a really good team in terms of giving themselves second and third chances. They're outside the top 275 there. It's an Army team that they've been pretty good in terms of not allowing second and third chances. Top 110 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage for Boston U. Right now, they're about 47th in the country, but away from home, they do allow opponents to grab about 27% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. And for this Boston U team, if they're in a pressure spot, they only shoot about 71% of the free throw line. That's outside the top 200 in all of college basketball. And for Ryan Curry, he's done a nice job really taking things over for Army. 14.5 points, 4.3 boards, 4.5 assists, shoots 38% from 3. Jackson Furman shoots 35.5% from 3-point range. And with Army, with how many shots they take from 3-point range, they take over 50% of their shots at home from 3-point range. It's big that they've been able to shoot right in that neighborhood of about 34.5% from 3-point range at home compared to about 31.5% away from home. And then you have the Jacksons, Jackson Bell, and Jackson Holloway, who have been able to combine for about 22.5 points per game. Army, very similar to the free throw shooting percentage of Boston U at about 70.5%. And this is an Army team that's not going to put you under duress. They're outside the top 250 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. But against Boston Boston U team that's not really going to push the issue either. I think that Army, with the way that they control the boards and the way that they're able to shoot it from three, gets the job done. Semi-line at 141.5, like the under, and Army on the money line. 306, 647, 306, 548. You've got Holy Cross playing against Colgate. Colgate is a pretty sizable road favorite here of 6.5 points. Start on scheme 141.5 to 142.5. So Colgate is an 8.5 point favorite. I'm going to be one to lay it. Now, this has been a Holy Cross team that's been pretty solid in terms of not allowing great looks from three, but after they shot 38.5% from 3-point range as a collective last year, down to 33% overall this year. Now, that does ascend to about 37.4% from 3-point range in their home games, and you do have a Colgate team that can be a little bit iffy with their defense. They're outside the top 140 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, while Colgate, they're allowing teams to shoot about 33% from 3-point range, top 150 mark there, but Colgate away from home, they're actually much better with their defense. They allow opponents away from home to shoot 31.5% from 3-point range. At home, that actually goes up to 36%, and for Colgate, they've got by far the most versatile player out there on the floor, Jalen Cox, 17 points, 5 boards, 5.5 assists, shoots 40% from 3, and then you have Ben Tweedy along with Kyle Carlissimo, who combined to shoot about 36.5% from 3. They combine to be able to give you about 16.5 points per game. Now, this Colgate team is not going to give themselves second and third chances. They're outside the top 275 with regards to their offensive rebound percentage. It's a Holy Cross team that they themselves are a team that doesn't allow a lot of second and third chances, but they're not going to be able to haul in their offensive rebounds. 7.7 offensive rebounds per game is a bottom 20 mark in all of college basketball. Holy Cross outside the top 250 with their own 2-point shooting percentage. They're a bottom 15 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Three of guys who give you double figures: Joe Nugent, Tyler Boston, and Gabe Warren. And Warren has been able to give you about 4 boards, a steal per contest. Nugent does shoot 40% from 3-point, but he's been dealing with an injury. We have not seen him here in the month of February, so had to dock them for that. That means that DeAndre Williams, who gives you about 7.5 points per game, is going to see a little bit more time. And for Holy Cross, this is a unit that has been good in terms of not allowing you to get to the free throw line. They fail to get to the free throw line themselves, though. And with this Holy Cross team being as fragile as they are on the inside, I do think the Colgate finds a way to get the job done, and I do think that the Nugent injury could be costing you an over. So by total of 140.5. I'm in on the under, and I'm willing to lay it up to 8 here with Colgate. 306, 549, 306, 550. Austin Peay is on the road against Queens NC. Queens NC is a 1.5 to a 2.5 point favorite. Total on this game, it is 160.5, and with Austin Peay, I made them the 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take them on the money line. It's an Austin Peay defense that has been really good away from home, and they don't allow you to be able to get good looks from 3-point range. You're 75th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and they put you under duress with their just overall pressing style. Top 50 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis away from home. Overall 45th in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. They are going to have their hands full with this Queens NC offense, because you look at Queens NC, overall they're 34th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They actually lead the country in terms of points per possession when they're at home. This is also a Queens NC team that's 344th in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. At home, teams shoot 39.1% from 3-point range. They're outside the top 3 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and I do think that the defense here is going to be able to win out. You've been able to get a little bit more out of Rashad Marshall down low for Austin Peay. He's been able to supply about 6.5 boards, 13.5 points per game, and then you've got a pair of go-to scorers in Colin Parker along Zaire Collins. They combined for about 31.5 points per game. Between the two of them, they shoot about 40% from 3-point. Collins is the quarterback of the defense with about 2.2 steals per game. Then you've had Anton Brookshire be able to give you about 8 points per game overall for the season, but he's been able to ascend to being a double-figure scorer here in Atlantic Sun play. And then for Queens NC, you've got the man and Nasir man, who's been really the lone guy on the roster that gives you over 5 rebounds per game, 5.5 boards, 12.5 points, 3 assists per game, and then you get 3.5 assists out of Yoel Berman, who last year was a really good 3-point shooter. This year down to less than 30% for 3, but Avante Parker, Carson Schwieger, they combined to shoot about 44% for 3. They both give you combined 22.5 points per game, and you have 7 different guys on this roster that give you at least 7.7 points per game, but the defense has been all sorts of ghastly. Both of these teams look to play at a fast pace, but not necessarily just completely gunning it. Queens 112th in terms of total possessions per game. Austin Peay is 130th, but I do think that the Austin Peay defense is going to be able to do just enough to get you the under. Semi-total 159.5, so at a 160 plus in on the under, and I do like Austin Peay on the money line. 306, 551, 306, 552. You've got American on the road against Lehigh. Lehigh, a home underdog of 1 to 1.5 points, and your totals 138.5 to 139.5. American, I said, as a 1.5 point favorite. I'm willing to lay 1 and not a half a point more, and for American, this is not necessarily the world's greatest team on the glass. They're about 236th in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Lehigh is well outside the top 320 with regards to their overall rebound percentage. They don't grab offensive rebounds. They allow you to grab second and third chances on the defensive glass, and I think that that's going to be the difference, especially with American being as good as they are in terms of generating turnovers. They're a top 75 unit in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and Lehigh is just outside the top 250 in terms of their ball security. Now you have Nasir Whitlock, who's been able to shoot about 40% from three, 20 points per game, and then Hank Alveri has been able to be very versatile, about 1.8 blocks, 14 points. He actually shoots 45.5% from three-point range. Lehigh overall for the season, they do shoot about 34% from three-point range. That's ascended to being about 35.7% here in conference play, and they've actually been the top 2-point shooting percentage of defense here in conference play overall. They're a top 125 team with that regard, and they cut teams off from three-point range. They've been a top 30 team in terms of percentage of opponents' shots that are 2-point shots, but for this American team, they've actually been really good on the inside. They're a top 125 team with their 2-point shooting percentage country average, with their 3-point shooting, and you've got a pair of guys in Greg Jones, Bain Collins. They lead the way with a combined 25.4 points per game. The other guy shoots about 30% for three. It's the answer guys like Wyatt Nadesis, who's been able to shoot about 39.5% from three, 8.5 points per game. Jeff Spruce, 8.5 points. He shoots 38% from three. I do think that with this American team being one that is sure-handed at the free throw line in a pressure spot, shoots 75.5% at the free throw line, and they've been a top 175 team in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage and having the edge on the glass. That American gets the job done. One to lay up to one of the American. Did semi total here at a 135.5. You've got an American team that overall for the season to our 90th in terms of total possessions per game. Lehigh a little bit more of a mid-tempo team at 161st, but I think that American controls this game with generating turnovers and controlling the board. So I'm going to lay the number here with American up to 1, and I'm in on the under. 306.553, 306.554. Seton plays those to Jacksonville. Jacksonville does find themselves as a favorite here of 1.5 points. So this game is 137.5, and I made a total of a 136.5, like the under. We've got a Jacksonville team that is super duper slow, 322nd in terms of total possessions per game, but the defense is not good to say the least. The one thing that Jacksonville does, they don't allow a ton of second and third chances. Top 125 team with regards to defensive rebound percentage, but it's a Seton team that's not hauling in their offensive rebounds to begin with, and for Jacksonville, they've been outside the top 3 with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, and that's doomsday against a Seton team that overall for the season they only shoot 33% from three. That's about country average, but Seton has really been able to get things going here in conference play that goes up to 36.9% from three-point range, specifically at home. They shoot 39.3% from three-point range. For Jacksonville, you just really don't have that go-to score. Right now, you only have one guy that gives you double figures, that's Hayden Wood. Does shoot 40% from three, but that's only 10.2 points per contest. You don't have a single guy on the roster that gives you over 5 rebounds per game as well. Jacksonville in a pressure spot, they only shoot about 70.5% at the free throw line. And for a team that's supposed to be built with their interior defense, right now they clock in outside the top 270 with regards to opponent's 2-point shooting percentage. They're outside the top 260 with regards to turnovers generated on a per possession basis. And this is a Seton team that's very sloppy. They're outside the top 3 with regards to ball security, but you've got a lot of guys who are able to go bombs away from three, even with dealing with the injury to Jamie Phillips, who right now he's your top scorer with about 17 points per contest. We have not seen him in about a month. You still have had Colin Cool, Ethan Copeland be able to step up, give you about 26 points per game. Both shoot above 39.5% from 3-point. Jake Johnson has been able to give you 9 points. He throws in there above 34% 3-point shooting as well. Seton, they only shoot about 68.5% the free throw line. They've been a little bit brutal there, and it's a Seton defense that they're a bottom 15 team with regards to bonus 2-point shooting percentage, but Jacksonville is not even executing there as well. I do think that this is going to be a sloppy game. It's going to be a slow down game, but I do think that in the end, Seton should be the favorite. So set them as a 4.5-point favorite. I like them on the money line and on the under. So I total 136.5. 306.555, 306.556. You've got West Georgia, and they're going to be on the road against North Alabama. And North Alabama is a very slim favorite here of 1.5 points. So on this game, you're going to be finding it at a 145 to a 145.5. I did set my total at a 143. I'm going to be willing to take a shot here on the under, mainly because I just don't think that North Alabama does their part with this total. For North Alabama, they are outside the top 275 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. They're not giving up a ton of second and third chances at home. At home, teams are only hauling in there about 25.9%. Other mid shots as an offensive rebound, so that's the top 150 mark, and North Alabama is playing very slowly, 285th in terms of total possessions per game. West Georgia is looking to crank up a bit more tempo, 89th in terms of total possessions per game, and this is a West Georgia team that's not going to put you under duress. They're outside the top 285 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but they've got the best player, in my opinion, in this game, Sheldon Williams-Dryden, who has been just superb with 20.5 points, 9.5 boards from 3-point. He shoots only about 26% from three, but he gets up from his friends as West Georgia as a whole. They shoot about 34.5% from three. That's the top 175 mark in the country. Where this West Georgia team can be at is on the inside. side. They're outside the top 3 with regards to their opponent's 2-point shooting percentage and their own 2-point shooting percentage. But that said, they've been able to pull in there some second and third chances, something that North Alabama surprisingly has not been able to do much of. For North Alabama, even though you've got Cornelius Williamson, who's been able to give you 12 plus points, 9 plus rebounds per game, they're 303rd in terms of their percentage of missed shots that become an offensive rebound. Meanwhile, you've got a West Georgia team that has ascended in the top 245 with regards to their overall points scored on a per possession basis, and much of that is because this team does find themselves in the top 150 in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. And then for West Georgia, you've been able to get quite a bit of production out of Josh Smith, who's been supplying about 15.5 points, shoots only about 32% from 3-point range. But the come up that we've been seeing out of Malcolm Noel has been able to give you 8 points, 3 assists, becoming one of the main facilitators for this team has been massive. And then for North Alabama, you do have a pair of guys in the backcourt in Dante Bacchus along Keenan Jefferson who have been supplying a combined about 27 to 28 points per game, but neither of these guys shoot above 32% from 3-point range. You've had some mixers and shakers like a Kevin De Kavuchis, who's been able to give you about 10.5 points per game. He shoots about 33% from 3-point range, but for North Alabama, they're just not really excelling in anything whatsoever other than not turning the ball over, but they themselves outside the top 3 in terms of generating turnovers. So I do think that West Georgia is going to be able to hold in this game in the end. I do think that West Georgia being on the road, it's a little bit of a tight spot, so I did set North Alabama as a 1-point favorite, but getting 1.5 here with West Georgia, I'm going to take the points, but not the money line, and I'm in on the under semi-total at a 143, 306.557, 306.558. Lafayette plays us at Loyola Maryland. Loyola Maryland is a underdog of 2.5 to 3.5 points. So on this game, 145.5. Semi-line at a 5, so I'm going to be willing to lay with Lafayette. Lafayette has been a team that has not been able to give themselves any sort of second and third chances. 312th in the country in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, and Loyola has been a relatively solid interior offense. They're a top 175 team with their 2-point shooting percentage. Don't really give themselves second and third chances. 257th with that regard, but I do think that Lafayette has the better top-end talent, which is why I'm going to be willing to lay it. Now for Loyola Maryland, you've been able to get quite a bit of production on Braden Speed, who's been able to give you 15 points per game, and he's really stepped it up with having Emmett Adair along with Jacob Theodusu deal with injuries. Now, both of these guys should be good to go in this game. They combine between the two of them for about 27.5 points per game, but both guys shoot less than 30% from 3. It's a Loyola Maryland team that's been really struggling around the perimeter, as this is a unit that's outside the top 2 with regards to turnovers generated on a per possession basis on defense, outside the top 2 in terms of taking care of the ball. And if you're in a pressure spot, they only shoot about 69.2% at the free throw line. But on the flip side for Lafayette, even though it's a little bit of a top-heavy team, you've got Mr. Caleb Williams, no, not the Bears quarterback, shooting 36.5% from 3, 16 points, 3.5 assists per game. And then Andrew Phillips, 14 points, 4.5 boards, shoots in the mid-30s from 3. Mark Butler is able to throw in there 4 assists per game. Lafayette, a top 175 team in terms of taking care of the ball. Lafayette awful with their interior offense. They're outside the top 3 with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, and they, much like Loyola Maryland, have a tough time at the free throw line. They only shoot about 68.8% at the free throw line, but that said, this has been a unit that has been able to do a relatively okay job on the glass. Both of these teams have been outside the top 225 with regards to their rebound percentage, but you've been able to get quite a bit out of Christian Humphrey Rembert, who's been able to give you 8.5 points, 6.5 rebounds per game, and in a tight spot at home with Loyola Maryland having a lot of their guys back, but still deal with a little bit of ailment and some of these guys being held back, and this being a Loyola Maryland team that has been giving up quite a bit on the inside themselves in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They are well outside the top 3. I think that Lafayette finds a way to be able to get the job done in a game that's going to be close enough for late game following. Semi-total at a 143, so I'm going to be willing to lay with Lafayette. And at the 145.5, that becomes my minimum buy point on the under, mainly because for Loyola Maryland and Lafayette, not necessarily up-tempo teams, 154th in terms of total possessions per game for Loyola, and Lafayette 279. So in on the under and willing to lay with Lafayette. 306.559, 306.560. You've got North Florida, and they're going to be on the road against Florida Gulf Coast. Dunk City does find themselves as a pretty good-sized favorite here of 12.5 points. 164 to 164.5 is the total, and for North Florida, I did set them as an underdog of 11 points. So I'm going to be willing to take the points with North Florida. You're going to have a lot of 3-point shooting in this game, as Florida Gulf Coast has overall for the season been able to shoot above 35% from 3-point. They've been a top 125 team there, and for North Florida, their 3-point shooting has actually traveled quite well. Overall, they shoot 36.6% from 3, and I think it was down to 36.3% away from them. Now, Florida Gulf Coast, even though they've been outside the top 225 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, they have a massive advantage here. It's North Florida is right now allowing teams to grab 37.3% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That goes to 40.3% away from home. So second and third chances aplenty here in what should be a very up-tempo game. North Florida, 26th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Dunk City is 81st. So I am going to be in on this total over. I said my total at a 169, but do have Cameron Oriole for North Florida, who's been able to supply 20.5 points. He's shooting 42% for three. Ken Jackson shoots 38% for three with about 15 points per game. Dalton Gaiman, he's been able to shoot 37.5% from the outside. So weapons upon weapons, and North Florida's awful at getting to the free throw line, but when they get there, they shoot about 78.5% at the free throw line, and they're very fragile on the inside. They're a bottom 10 team in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. That's going to help out Florida Gulf Coast team that has been dealing with an injury to one of their main scorers in J.R. Konsinski, who's give you about 15.5 points per game, but you've got Ramir Barno along with Jordan Ellerby, who are combining for about 25 points per game, and Ellerby in good in the neighborhood, shooting 41% for three. Konsinski probably should be good to go in this game. We saw him in that game against Bellarmine put in their 20-plus points, and then you've got Isaiah Malone, who's been able to give you 5.5 boards, 9.5 points per game. For Dunk City, they're about a country average team with their 2-point shooting percentage, but they've also been able to do a nice job on the boards. They've been a top 150 team with regards to their overall rebound percentage. I do think that that's going to win out here, but I think that North Florida is going to carve up a Florida Gulf Coast defense that's outside the top 250 in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage to keep things lively. So I did set a total of 169. I think that you get a very high scoring game in on the over, and I'm willing to take the points with North Florida. 3-6-5-61, 3-6-5-62. Central Arkansas plays us to Bellarmine. Bellarmine is a underdog of 8.5 points to 7.5 points. So on this game, 152.5. Semi-total 158.5. I'm in on the over. Central Arkansas is much better with their defense than they have been in past years. They're up to the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Bellarmine is slow. They're in first in terms of total possessions per game. Central Arkansas looking to push a bit more tempo, 114th in terms of total possessions per game, and Central Arkansas shoots it really well from three-point range at home. 38.7% at home. That goes down to 30.8% away from home. But that said, I do think that you get a high-scoring game, mainly because for Central Arkansas, they're very vulnerable on the inside. They're outside the top 320 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. And Bellarmine has been a top 25 team in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage. So I do think that you get a lot of scoring there, but still going to be willing to lay with Central Arkansas because you do have Cameron Hunter, who's been able to give you 16-plus points, 4-plus boards per contest, and for Bellarmine, they are a bottom 15 team in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. At Bellarmine, their 6.3 offensive rebounds per game is dead second last in all of college basketball. Do like what you get out of Jack Krasinski, 19.5 points, right around about 5 rebounds per game, and then you've had Keenan Gooding along with Brian Waddell be able to combine for about 27.5 points per game. Between the two of them, they do shoot darn near 40% from three-point range, and it is a Central Arkansas team that's been about a country average team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They're starting to generate some turnovers, top 100 team. There's the turnovers generated on a per possession basis at home with Ty Robinson, give you 13 points, 1.7 steals per game, and as a matter of fact, for Central Arkansas, each of your top 5 scorers do generate at least 1 steal per game. Bellarmine has been pretty solid in terms of taking care of the ball, though, so I do think that that's going to be a little bit of an elixir there, but again, with this Bellarmine defense being as bad as they are, I do think that this might be a little bit of a slow down game, but I do think that you get really good offensive efficiency, and it is a Central Arkansas team that's also a top 75 team with their own 2-point shooting percentage, so 1-8 with Central Arkansas, and on the over semi-total at a 158.5, and we wrap things up with 306-563, 306-564. Eastern Kentucky is going to be on the road against Lipscomb. Lipscomb is a 5.5 to a 6.5 point favorite, 160.5 to 161.5 is the total, with Lipscomb made them a 7.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Eastern Kentucky is just not the team that they have been in the past in terms of generating turnovers well outside the top 200, in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Both teams are relatively even up on the defensive glass. Eastern Kentucky, they're right around about 220th in terms of percentage of missed shots become an offensive rebound for opponents. Lipscomb is 194th, and this has been a Lipscomb team that has been a really good shooting team. Eastern Kentucky, they themselves shoot about 34.5% for three-point range. That's a top 140 mark in all of college basketball, but Lipscomb at home, they do shoot 39% for three-point range. That's a top 50 mark in the country, and it's an Eastern Kentucky team that is going to have Matavius Myrick be able to give you about 12 points, 7 rebounds per game. Turner Buttery, along with Juan Cranford, they combine for about 24 points per game between the two of them. They both shoot in the mid-30s from three-point range, and for Eastern Kentucky, they allow opponents to shoot about 35.3% from three. Interestingly, that goes down to 33.7% away from home, and Lipscomb at home only allows you to shoot about 32% from three-point range, so I do think that they're going to control the tenor of this game, but the big kicker here is that Lipscomb has become a really good turnover team. In terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, they're a top 115 team with this regard, and Eastern Kentucky, again, they've just really seen that wane and linger, and for Lipscomb, you've got really good versatility with having Charlie Williams and Grant Asman, a pair of guys that are 6'10 plus, be able to pop it from three. Williams shoots about 32% from three, 10.5 points, pair of assists per contest. Asman, 14.5 points, your main scorer shoots 40% from three, and then Mateo Esmeraldo, he supplies 4 boards, 7 assists, 10.5 points, also shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range, and if you need Lipscomb to cover at the free throw line, they shoot 76.5% at the free throw line. Not a team that's going to give you any sort of second and third chances or anything like that, but they do also square off against an Eastern Kentucky team that they foul quite a bit, and for Eastern Kentucky, they've been outside the top 3 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. So set a total here of a 159.5. I'm going to be looking at the under because of Lipscomb's ability to generate turnovers at 108 to 70 of Lipscomb, and that wrap things up for the Wednesday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Big thanks to Alex White, does an incredible job over at Sports by the Book. She joined me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we have far those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so per usual, please send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. And from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And I'm with you guys every single day. Do you picks and analysis on every game, every day. So I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
You know that goal you set at the start of the year? You can still do it. Whether you're committed to a thru hike with friends, lifting heavier, or simply walking more. It's not too late to stick with it and make your future self proud, especially with the all-in-one nutrition shake from Kachava. Because quality nutrition shouldn't be complicated. Just 2 scoops of Kachava's all-in-one nutrition shake, and you've got 25 grams of protein, 6 grams of fiber, greens, adaptogens, and so much more. Plus, it actually tastes delicious. No fillers, no nonsense. Just the good stuff your body craves. So instead of adding to your backstock of supplements that overpromise and underdeliver, simplify your progress with just 2 scoops of the highest quality ingredients. Stick with your wellness goals. Go to Kachava.com and use code FITNESS for 15% off. That's Kachava.com and use code FITNESS. KACHAVA.com, code FITNESS.
Don't give up comfort for style. Mack Weldon's Ace Collection makes it effortless to look good while feeling comfortable. Go to MackWeldon.com and get 20% off your first order of $125 or more with promo code MAC25.
The new Wegovy pill is now available through Weight Watchers. Powerful GLP-1 results in a simple pill at the lowest price available. And with Weight Watchers, you can get doctor support and personalized nutrition programs. See if you qualify at WeightWatchers.com. Ad not reviewed or approved by Novo Nordisk.